Chapter 355. Li Xiqing's lips curled up. His mood, which had been tense for more than a month, was miraculously relieved. Su Qianxi did not want to talk to him and drove steadily. However, in the end she couldn't help asking, "Where is the store?" "Surely Mingdu." Su Qianxi was dazed and looked at him. "Isn't it in the back?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell me earlier?" "You didn't ask." Su Qianxi gritted her teeth, wishing she could throw him out of the car. However, she still turned the steering wheel and headed for Shirley Mingdu. "Turn right and get out," he said quietly. Su Qianxi found a place to park the car. The rain was still pouring. He picked up the umbrella and opened the door. "Sit." Su Qianxi blinked. Did he want to pick her up? Did he think she would not have an umbrella in the car? Su Qianxi pouted and got out of the car with an umbrella after he got out. The pink umbrella had a couple kissing on it, full of teenage girls' hearts. Su Qianxi locked the car and walked forward with the umbrella. Li Xiqing's eyes became more and more serious. He stopped and said slowly, "It's a bit far. Follow me." Okay. It was indeed a bit far. About 20 minutes later, the rain gradually subsided, and they turned into a deep alley. It was very clean. Although the alley was small, the decoration style inside was no worse than those outside Shirley Mingdu. It was the first time that Su Qianxi had been here and she was a bit surprised. "I didn't expect it to be so beautiful." He closed the umbrella and walked into a store. The eye-catching century-old brand was very eye-catching. Su Qianxi was drooling when she walked in and saw a dazzling array of dried meat and snacks. The history and origin of the store were written on the wall, which Su Qianxi read with great interest. Li Xiqing ordered a few flavors and glanced at her. Then his eyes fell on the umbrella she put at the door. After reading the history of the store, Su Qianxi wandered around the shelves. When he came to call her, he was already carrying 2 full bags. "Let's go." "Okay." The rain became heavier again. The rain poured down in torrents, but the puddles on the road were much better than before. It was not to the extent that they could not walk. Su Qian picked up the foldable umbrella at the door and was stunned. Because she thought it would not take long to buy things, she did not put the umbrella back. However, when she picked it up, she only lifted one part of the umbrella. Looking at the umbrella in her hand and the umbrella on the ground, she stomped her foot in anger. "What the hell, who did this? Damn it." Li Xiqing stood behind her and said coldly, "You must have stepped on it accidentally. Look at the footprint." There was a black footprint on the surface of the umbrella, dripping with water. Looking at the footprint, Su Qianxi was heartbroken. This umbrella was newly bought, and he especially liked the pattern on it. This was his first time using it, but it was destroyed just like that. Su Qianxi's face scrunched up in anger. Li Xiqing glanced at her and said calmly, "It's just an umbrella. It doesn't matter if it breaks. But the rain is so heavy. Without an umbrella I will be wet. I have one." He picked up the big black umbrella that was dripping water. "Let's go." What the hell, he was going to share an umbrella with her. Su Qianxi opened her mouth and mumbled, "In such a heavy rain, 2 people sharing an umbrella will definitely get wet." Chapter 356. Elopement. Su Qianxi blushed. "I just said wet. I also said wet bends. Is that wrong?" He looked at her seriously. Su Qianxi blushed even more. Did he just say elopement or wet? Although Southerners might not pronounce private and wet, Li Xiqing had taken an advanced Mandarin test. In order to follow him, she had taken the test in her previous lifetime as well. Could it be that she had misheard? "Let's go." He handed the 2 bags of food to her. "Protect them." Su Qianxi took them and held them in her arms. Li Xiqing was wearing a dark gray coat with a straight suit underneath. After opening the umbrella, he took her waist with his coat. Su Qianxi's body stiffened and she struggled. "What are you doing, going home?" Li Xiqing's warm breath was on her ear. Su Qianxi felt her face was burning. He said in a low voice, "Protect the food. Don't let Grandpa wait." So, she protected the food and he protected her? Thinking of this, Su Qianxi's heart raced. He took her down the stairs. Seeing her pink ears, Li Xiqing's cold eyes became softer, and he wrapped his coat tighter around her. On the way no one spoke. Su Qianxi felt warm all over. Holding the food tightly in her arms, she was surprised that no water splashed on her. When they returned to the car, Su Qianxi found that Li Xiqing's back was soaked. Seeing him take off his coat, Su Qianxi moved her lips but did not say anything. Glancing at her well-protected body and the food, she felt warm. They did not speak on the way. When they arrived at the old house, it was almost 6 p.m. Li Xiqing went to the room to change, and Su Qianxi gave the newly bought jerky to Grandpa. Captain Li was very happy, looking at her with a satisfied smile. Su Qianxi felt a bit embarrassed and went to the kitchen to help Lu Sa make glutinous rice balls. Lu Sa wrapped the dough with stuffing, sesame, peanuts, quicksand. Su Qianxi was responsible for throwing the glutinous rice balls into the pot and scooping them out after they were cooked. When Lu Sa brought over the last bowl of glutinous rice balls, she came over and asked mysteriously, "Did you make up?" Su Qianxi paused. Seeing the mischievous smile on Lu Sa's face, she immediately thought of the phone call she just had and nodded. Sort of. At the very least, their relationship had broken the ice, hadn't it? Finally, the clouds have parted to see the moon. Recently, the old man has been worried to death. Sigh. That's good. I think the old man will let you stay for the night. I've already prepared clothes for you. Thank you, Lu Sa. Don't stand on ceremony. It's cooked. Hurry up and scoop it up. Don't break it. Su Qianxi looked at the dumplings in the pot and quickly scooped them up with a colander. He distributed the glutinous rice balls according to their heads, but before he could take them out, he heard a commotion outside. It sounded like they were quarreling. She was shocked and ran out of the kitchen. She immediately saw Mrs. Tang yelling at Li Xiqing like a shrew, "Li Xiqing, you bastard, give my daughter back. Where did you hide her?" Mrs. Tang looked a bit agitated. With red eyes, she looked at Li Xiqing as if he was her enemy. Li Xiqing sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, looking cold and noble. He looked at her and said, "Mrs. Tang, what do you mean?" "Wan Lily, here comes the troublemaker. How do you want Tang Menjing to die? P.S. Today I learned that browsers also have reading channels. I heard that there are a lot of readers on the browser. Don't move." Chapter 357. What a cunning guy. She should have known that, given the boy's character, even if he really liked Tang Menjing, he would never compromise under their threat. At the time she did not think much about it. Later, she found that Tang Menjing had not been home for more than 2 months and could not get through to her. Although she had texted and chatted with her, Tang Menjing had not even sent a voice message. Other than telling them that Li Xiqing had given her a villa, she had not heard from her again. Mrs. Tang suddenly realized that Li Xiqing was fooling them. He was so anxious that he immediately rushed over in a hurry. Seeing Li Xiqing's calm look, Mrs. Tang trembled with anger and yelled, "Stop pretending! Where did you hide her?" Her voice was sharp and hysterical. "You'd better give my daughter back or I will sue you." "Sue me?" Li Xiqing crossed his arms and did not panic at all. Sitting on the sofa, he was extremely calm. "Sue me for what? Where is the evidence?" Mrs. Tang paused and immediately yelled, "Do I even need evidence? My daughter was taken away by you. She has not contacted us for such a long time. You must have locked her up. Let me tell you, this is illegal imprisonment." "Mrs. Tang, there must be evidence for everything. You have no evidence. We can sue you for slander." Li Beixing walked out, followed by Li Xiao and his wife. Seeing Qin Shuhua, Mrs. Tang's eyes became even redder. She cried, "My poor daughter. She gave birth to a child for such a man and is locked up. She can't even see her mother on this holiday. This is so miserable. This family will die a horrible death. Oh my God." Li Xiao's brother, Li Sheng, and his family were all in the backyard. There was some distance between the living room and the backyard, but Mrs. Tang was so loud that Li Weya heard the noise and ran out. Hearing the noise, old Master Li also walked out with his walking stick. He stomped his walking stick on the ground and said angrily, "Why is it you again? I told you, the Li family no longer allows people from the Tang family to come." Mrs. Tang cried even more hysterically and yelled, "Your whole family is a bunch of bastards. My daughter gave birth to a child for the Li family with a big belly. You heartless family, you just watched your little bastard lock our daughter up. There's no justice and no law." Her voice was very noisy. Li Beixing's lips twitched. He went forward and lifted Mrs. Tang up, saying, "Mrs. Tang, don't cry at a funeral on a holiday. What does it have to do with us that your daughter went missing? My daughter must have been locked up by your younger brother. If you don't believe me, you can ask him." He struggled violently and even bumped into Li Beixing. Li Beixing shrugged helplessly and looked at his younger brother. Li Xiqing remained calm and said, "I didn't. Please go back, Mrs. Tang." If Mrs. Tang did not know what kind of person Li Xiqing was, she might have been fooled by him. But she had always known that this kid was the most cunning and sinister. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it." Missing persons can be reported within 24 hours. "Do you need help?" A young female voice came. She was tall and slim, looking delicate. Chapter 358. My man. Those 3 words made Li Xiqing, who had been calm for a long time, feel a strong emotion in his eyes. Turning his head, he saw Su Qianxi's gentle profile. She was smiling, her eyes full of sarcasm. Just like that day in bed, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened. He reached out and held her soft hand, feeling a bit cold. Su Qianxi glanced at him and then turned back to Mrs. Tang. She said in a calm voice, "Miss Tang is an adult. She has her own life and thoughts." Mrs. Tang was watching her daughter like this and she lost her. "How can you accuse my husband of locking her up?" Yes, her man, her husband. That was quite a smooth word. Li Xiqing tightened his grip on her hand and his eyes lit up. "Little bitch, you are not a good person either. If it were not for you, Tang Menjing would not have ended up like this," Mrs. Tang cursed. "You are trespassing. If you don't leave, I will call the police." Su Qianxi took out her phone and waved it at her. "Go ahead, call the police." Su Qianxi's eyes became even colder. She dialed the 3 numbers. "Hello, this is Li's house, number 88 in XX district. My last name is Su and there is someone—" "Enough!" Mrs. Tang roared. "You really dare to call the police? Wait and see." "You heard it. Not only did she trespass, she slandered me and my husband and threatened me." Trembling with anger, Mrs. Tang was about to grab the phone from her. However, Li Beixing was right next to her. How could she be so arrogant? Li Beixing grabbed Mrs. Tang and dragged her out. "I'm sorry, Auntie Tang. Our family is going to celebrate the new year. You can call the police to find your daughter later." Mrs. Tang struggled and yelled, but she could not get rid of Li Beixing's strength. After throwing her out, Li Beixing closed the door and locked it. "There are all kinds of people these days," Li Beixing complained as soon as he walked in, but he found the atmosphere was not right. He was holding Su Qianxi's hand, but she did not look very happy. Li Beixing walked in and teased, "I didn't expect this, sister-in-law. How domineering. He called the police just like that. But will the police really come later?" "I won't." Su Qianxi's smile was a bit forced. She wanted to get rid of his hand, but he did not move. "Time to eat. I have something to say to you. Let's talk after dinner." "I can't wait." Li Xiqing stood up and pulled her toward the room. Su Qianxi exclaimed and stumbled to keep up with him. Feeling the ambiguous looks from the elders and cousins around her, her heart was pounding and she shrank her head. He dragged her into the room and closed the door behind him. "What do you want to say?" Before she finished, her words were drowned in her mouth. Her eyes widened, she subconsciously struggled. However, he put her hand down and deepened the kiss. She could clearly feel his joy and excitement. His initial struggle gradually softened. Beside his ears, she could hear his slightly hurried breathing. Chapter 359. Just when Su Qianxi thought she was about to suffocate, he let her go. Su Qianxi collapsed in his arms, panting. "Do you know, I'm so happy." His deep voice and warm breath were all gently teasing the limp body. Su Qianxi felt a bit weak. Lying on him, she asked, "What are you happy about?" Li Xiqing did not speak again, but his dark eyes were full of excitement, shining brightly. Su Qianxi blushed under his naked gaze. She looked away and asked the question she wanted to ask. "Isn't Tang Menjing in your house in Jiangzhou?" Li Xiqing's eyes flashed and he asked, "How do you know?" "I saw. You went to see her." "Went to see Tang Menjing? That was more than a month ago." Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes. All the things that he had been unable to figure out suddenly connected, and he suddenly felt enlightened. "So, you sentenced me to death because of this?" An oppressive aura was instantly emitted from his body, and it was cold and penetrating. Su Qianxi shrank her neck and felt guilty. She whispered, "So, you quarreled with me and hit me because you saw me visiting Tang Menjing. Because of this, you think Tang Menjing's child is really mine, right?" Yes, he guessed right. However, why did Su Qianxi feel so guilty when he said it all out? He was clearly in the wrong first, so why should she feel guilty? He made it sound like it was her fault. Su Qianxi raised her head, looked at him and said, "Isn't it?" He gazed at her deeply, suddenly lowered his head and bit her neck. She frowned in pain and struggled with her hands, yelling, "Li Xiqing, let go." Hearing that, he did ease up a bit, sucking her neck. The tip of his tongue gently swirled on the tender flesh and she shivered. Her whole body was limp and she collapsed. Li Xiqing lifted her up with his thigh and made her face him. He whispered, "Why are you thinking about it? I've said it many times, it wasn't me. I did lock Tang Menjing up. The villa in Jiangzhou has been transferred to her name to cover Tang Jinghao's site. Otherwise, why do you think they only found out now that Tang Menjing is missing?" As he spoke, he had already moved away from her neck and whispered to her face, Su Qianxi was tickled by his hot breath, and her breathing became more rapid. I locked her up because I wanted her to give birth to the child to prove my innocence. Amniocentesis requires absolute calmness and obedience of the pregnant woman. Tang Menjing reacted violently when she heard that and refused to take the amniotic fluid again. I cannot prove my innocence without a DNA test. That DNA test was forged by Rong Rui. He admitted it himself, but he didn't want to help me recover the original information. This is the only way. Only when Tang Menjing's child is born and my innocence is proven, can I convince the elders and you. When the time comes, I'll take you to Ireland, okay? He couldn't wait any longer. The surprise he had prepared for her was absolutely unprecedented and would never be repeated again. Chapter 360. Su Qianxi felt weak all over, her body trembling. Li Xiqing chuckled and kissed her earlobe. Shivering even more, she looked up and narrowed her eyes. Li Xiqing had a smile in his eyes. This woman was so sensitive. Going to Ireland? Wedding? Yes, wedding. Didn't you say? You forgot. I said it out of anger. Su Qianxi's eyes were red and suddenly full of tears. They fell. Li Xiqing covered her face with his big hand and gently wiped away the tears. Don't cry. There are elders waiting for us outside for dinner. Su Qianxi pursed her lips and cried even harder. Is what you just said true? Why would I lie to you? I thought you loved Tang Menjing. Li Xiqing wiped away her tears and said unhappily, what you said is the biggest insult to yourself. Su Qianxi heard that and couldn't help laughing. Loving Tang Menjing was an insult to her? She had never realized that this guy was so good at talking before. Seeing her smile, Li Xiqing gently warned her after wiping away her tears, don't cry. Grandpa will scold me if he sees this. He looked at her pitifully. Su Qianxi's smile widened and she reached out to push him. Li Xiqing let her push him. With a rare smile, he poked her face. Why do you cry so much? No, she rarely cried in front of others. She just didn't know why she couldn't help it in front of him and unknowingly became a crybaby. Well, no. Pouting, she murmured, never? That's right. Looking up at his smiling eyes, she tugged at his sleeve and whispered, you really didn't do anything to Tang Menjing? No. Li Xiqing looked serious and said, if I had any feelings for her, it would have nothing to do with you now. Truth, the truth. Su Qianxi knew it, but she was still unhappy. Pushing him away, she opened the door and was about to go out. He put an arm around her neck and whispered, so, don't doubt me in the future. Your man is hurt. His low voice, with a bit of grievance and charm, made Su Qianxi's heart flutter. Your man? These 3 words sounded really good. Blushing, she tilted her head and whispered, are you flirting, Mr. Li? If Mrs. Li thinks so, then so be it. Their faces were so close that the tips of their noses were less than a centimeter apart. Looking at him, she suddenly bit his lips and said seriously, in the future, don't lie to me. Yes, I'm not lying. If I find out that you're lying to me, it'll be useless even if you act coquettishly. You lied to me once, I lied to you once. We're even now. Su Qianxi was dazed and thought of the time when Louis Han was discharged from the hospital. I was afraid that you would be angry. Hearing that, Li Xiqing mimicked her tone and whispered, I was afraid that you would worry. Su Qianxi was speechless. She pouted and took his hand away. Let's go. The elders are waiting for us. Okay. Li Xiqing held her hand and opened the door. They walked out side by side. As soon as they walked out, everyone in the living room looked at them. Hey, why is my cousin's mouth swollen? A child's voice rang and everyone laughed. Chapter 361. Gratified, satisfied, shocked, and flirtatious, all kinds of gazes converged. The deer couldn't help blushing and gave him a glare. Aya, this little deer is too naughty. Li Beishing teased. Hurry up and bring your little deer over to eat. Li Sheng's youngest son, Li Weiya's 5-year-old brother, heard that and looked left and right asking, how come I don't see it? Where is the deer? The whole family couldn't help laughing. Li Xiqing walked up, rubbed his little head and said with a straight face, that's mine. Don't even think about it. The little guy pouted and looked disgusted. Stingy second brother, I just want to see it. It's not like I can eat it. Humph, if you don't want to see it, then don't let me see it. I don't want to see it anyway. The whole family burst into laughter and Su Qianxi blushed the most. Turning her head, she decided not to stay there and went to the kitchen to help Lu Sa set the dishes. This winter solstice reunion dinner was a happy one. Su Qianxi had never had such an atmosphere. There were family, lovers, and even her heart was warm. After dinner, Grandpa suggested that they spend the night here, and Li Xiqing directly agreed. Su Qianxi did not know about it until she helped Lu Sa clean up. Although she had expected it, she still felt a little shy after not being together for more than a month, and her face was unconsciously hot. She went out for a walk with Grandpa. When she came back, Li Sheng's family had already left. Su Qianxi went back to her room and found Li Xiqing in a video conference. Seeing her come in, Li Xiqing just glanced at her and then continued to work. Su Qianxi rummaged through the closet, took out a set of pajamas and then went straight to the bathroom. After coming out, Li Xiqing was still busy, so she took out the tablet from her bag, plugged in the headphones and lay on the bed to watch a movie. It was an indie film that was popular some time ago, starring Deng Chao. When she saw the pig forcing a smile and wishing Swallow well, she couldn't help feeling sad. Swallow got in the car, and the pig finally couldn't help chasing after her, crying, "Swallow, how can I live without you?" Su Qianxi burst into tears and couldn't help crying. Suddenly she felt his hot breath on her ear. Turning off the tablet, he whispered, "You can cry while watching a movie. Why do you like to cry so much?" Su Qianxi let him hold her down and reached for her tablet, shouting, "Give it back to me. I haven't finished reading yet." Li Xiqing unplugged her headphones and put the tablet on the bedside table. "Are the people in the movie better looking than me?" Su Qianxi did not get it, so she gave up. She sniffed and said sullenly, "You are different from them." "How is it different?" "You're not acting." Li Xiqing chuckled, got off her, went around to her, and lay down in the same position as her. She then found that he had taken a shower and was wearing a thin rabbit fur robe. "Mrs. Li, yes?" Su Qianxi also looked at him, her eyes still a little red. "Do you take medicine every time you do it with Mr. Li?" Su Qianxi was dazed, blushed and shook her head. "No." After answering, she suddenly realized what he meant. Every time he did not take any safety precautions. Chapter 362. Subconsciously, she touched her belly and sat cross-legged. She blinked and said, "Is it a safe period every time?" Li Xiqing was lost in thought and began to count with his fingers. Su Qianxi blushed and patted his hand. "What are you talking about? You can remember when it was?" "That's not true." "Yes." Li Xiqing frowned. "We've only done it a few times. How can I not remember?" Then he sighed. "We've been married for so long and we've only done it once, twice, 5 times. It would have been fine if he did not count." Now that he did, Li Xiqing felt wronged. Lifting his eyes, a pair of pitch-black and deep eyes landed on her. There was a strong hidden bitterness in them, and the light in his eyes deepened, revealing the attributes of a naked, hungry wolf. She felt a bit scared and immediately shrank back. Li Xiqing was even faster. He grabbed her and pushed her onto the bed. The soft bed swayed with their intense movements. Then Su Qianxi's lips were sealed. Li Xiqing's movements were very gentle, so gentle that Su Qianxi's heart softened. She felt so happy. Every time he kissed her, she had a beautiful illusion that he was with her, not for sex but for love. The kiss deepened. Su Qianxi's breathing became more rapid. When he was about to do something else, she stopped and called, "Mr. Li, yes?" Li Xiqing liked this title more and more. In the past he felt it was too strange, but now he thought it was the sweetest. "Mr. Li, Mrs. Li." Back and forth, it was enough to cause a strong blow to the single people around. Li Xiqing's lips curled up, but he did not stop moving. He responded quietly. Su Qianxi gasped and pressed his hand down, saying, "Not today." He looked up and complained, "Mrs. Li, you are cutting the benefits." "I'm doing it." Su Qianxi's voice became lower and lower. "When?" "I just found out." Li Xiqing was about to go crazy. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed her hand as a punishment and bit her white and tender finger. Su Qianxi's fingers shrank. Her eyes were apologetic and full of interest. "Little rascal." He pulled her up and moved her to the side of the pillow. Putting an arm around her waist, he whispered, "Sleep. Behave." Su Qianxi saw his embarrassed look and was in a bad mood. She chuckled. "Don't laugh." However, she smiled even more happily. Burying her head in his chest, she couldn't help but smile. Finding a comfortable position in his arms, she closed her eyes contentedly. The Tang family wouldn't let the matter rest if they couldn't find Su Qingsang after making a scene in the Li family. Li Xiqing had expected this, so when he saw a bunch of reporters at the door of the company, his expression did not change much. Seeing Li Xiqing's car coming, the reporters rushed over like crazy. The building's security guards were not to be trifled with. They immediately came forward and pushed all the reporters away, protecting them in front of the car. The back door of the black Maybach was opened, and a tall and straight figure came out. He was wearing a black cashmere coat and a dark checkered suit, looking noble and indifferent. Faced with the overwhelming number of questions, Li Xiqing glanced around coldly. Immediately he turned around and put one hand on the back seat of the car, while the other hand was on the roof, in case the head of the person inside was hit. Even though her expression was cold, her actions were still filled with tenderness. This caused the surrounding reporters to exclaim in surprise. Chapter 363. There is someone else in the car. Who is it? Someone yelled, and all eyes focused on the back seat of the luxury car. Everyone saw a white, soft hand put on Li Xiqing's. Then she was wearing light green high heels, a light green skirt and a long cream-colored coat. Her black hair was tied into a ponytail. Perhaps because of the heat in the car, her face was a bit red. Taking a closer look, people found that her skin was unbelievably smooth. Her delicate and beautiful facial features were extremely familiar to the media. It's Mrs. Li. It really is Mrs. Li. Mrs. Li, I heard that Mr. Li has a mistress. Did you know about this? At the press conference last time, Miss Tang said that she was pregnant with Mr. Li's child. Now I heard that he has a mistress. Did you know about this? Mrs. Li, people were constantly taking photos. She frowned and reached out to hold his arm. Gathering her coat, she looked particularly calm and said, "He is not blind." Li Xiqing looked at her and said, "He is not blind." His words silenced all the voices. Li Xiqing's cold eyes became softer and he whispered, "Let's go." Led by Li Xiqing into the company, Su Qianxi was surrounded by all the jealous gazes and was taken to the top floor. Su Qianxi's words had caused a stir on Weibo. Her fans had skyrocketed by millions, almost as many as those famous bloggers on Weibo. The news that Tang Jinghao had sent out to smear Li Xiqing and the Li Group was all swept away. In the office of the president of the Tang Group, Tang Jinghao was furious and slammed a stack of documents down. Bastard. Last night he had sent someone to spread the news that Li Xiqing was keeping a mistress in his house to all the bloggers and paid a lot of money to spread the news. Who would have thought that one sentence from a little girl would ruin all the effort and money he had invested? The young female secretary pushed up her glasses and said, "There is someone behind the Li Group. Hacker Z works for Li Xiqing, so it is expected that we can't beat him on the internet." How could Tang Jinghao not understand this logic? But he couldn't take it anymore. He gritted his teeth and said, "Go find 2 private detectives and have them follow him 24/7. Also send the number 1 paparazzi and the number 1 gossip eye. I don't believe I can't find my daughter." The secretary nodded. "Yes. Go find a hacker and hack into his phone and computer. I don't believe that there are no clues at all." "Yes. Also help me find a person. That guy is a friend of my daughter. He is very capable. His name is Rong Rui." "All right. I don't believe that Li Xiqing can do anything." Tang Jinghao sneered. "Remember to do it cleanly and secretly." "Yes, I will definitely find someone trustworthy to do it." The secretary quickly wrote it down on a piece of paper. But soon she looked up and said, "President Tang, it's time to meet with Sheng Feng. They just called me to inform me, but the contract has changed." "How?" "Increase the contract to 5 times. Tang Jinghao's eyes lit up. "Really? Sheng Feng trusts us this much this time?" Chapter 364. Ha ha ha. The order has increased by 5 times, so of course the penalty fee has also increased by 5 times. Did you get the materials I told you about a few days ago? Yes, they are in storage. Good. Keep an eye on them. Contact Germany and tell them that they may get 5 times the materials at any time. Tell Sheng Feng that I will be there soon. Okay. The secretary nodded. However, I feel a bit strange. Sheng Feng has cooperated with us so many times, but they have never given us such a large order. What happened this time? Tang Jinghao frowned. The secretary smiled and said, "This shows that they have recognized our strength. The Tang Corporation is considered a veteran. Although it was hit by the Li Corporation 2 years ago, its development in the manufacturing industry in the past 2 years is no less than that of the Li Corporation. Perhaps this is our turning point?" Hearing that, Tang Jinghao was very satisfied and smiled happily. "Go do what you need to do." After the secretary went out, Tang Jinghao tidied up and went out as well. He looked very pleased with himself. If they were able to complete this deal, it would be the biggest profit that Tang Corp had made in the past few years. Su Qianxi was famous. Unprecedentedly famous. She was not from the entertainment industry, but in just one day she had become more popular than any other star on Weibo. Some media directly made a list of Su Qianxi's family background, with a striking title, counting the true identity of the rich wives. The names of Su Qianxi and the international pianist Song Yifan were at the top, attracting a lot of attention. In the capital military, Song Yifan's daughter? Rong Haiwe looked at the news on his phone and clicked on it. He was immediately attracted by the soft and delicate face. With a smile on her lips, she looked young and energetic, satisfied and stubborn. Rong Haiwe was fascinated. After a long while, his eyes fell on the wedding photo on the table. In the wedding photo, Rong Haiwe was smiling contentedly, while the woman next to him was smiling coldly and indifferently. Her facial features were so similar to this girl's. However, this was Song Yifan's daughter? The hand holding the phone suddenly tightened. Rong Haiwe sat up from the chair and walked outside. Rong Anna was about to go out. When she saw Rong Haiwe, she shouted, "Dad, are you going out?" Rong Haiwe responded, "I'm looking for your mother." "Where is she?" "Oh, Mom went out early in the morning." "You call her, I'm going out first." "Moi bye, Dad." Her witty words made Rong Haiwe's depressed mood a little better. His eyes softened and he said, "Go." Rong Anna left with a smile. Rong Haiwe picked up the phone and dialed his wife's number. The call was quickly picked up. "Hello. Where are you?" "Art Center, Symposium," he said simply. "When are you coming back?" "What's the matter?" His tone was indifferent and distant. Rong Haiwe held the phone tightly, but he still smiled and said half-jokingly, "I miss you." After a moment of silence he said, "Rong Haiwe, I am very busy." With that, the call was hung up. Rong Haiwe's lips curved into a self-deprecating smile. He clicked on the message bar and sent her a message. "I'm going to Kingstown for half a month." The other side quickly replied, "Have a nice trip. Sender, I love Xian." Rong Haiwe stared at these words for a long time before he slowly looked away, his eyes dim. "Haha, this is the first time I've updated so much at once. Are you surprised? Is there any reason not to recommend me? Give it to me." Libao Concentration Camp 1 Group 5586433293 full. Libao Concentration Camp 2 Group 3266681054 full. Libao Concentration Camp 3 Group 5873242201 full. Chapter 365. Li Xiqing's office was very large. In addition to the office area, there was a rest area and a cloakroom. Su Qianxi was lying on the single bed in the rest area, scrolling through Weibo. Looking at the comments of netizens, she suddenly felt superior. Seeing the number of fans increasing, Su Qianxi looked a little excited and shouted, "Mr. Li, do you think I will be popular if I become a Weibo celebrity? I have a lot of fans now." Not far away, Li Xiqing looked up from a thick stack of documents and saw that she had one foot on the bed and the other on the table. His lips twitching, he said quietly, "Mrs. Li, mind your image." Su Qianxi did not care at all and did not look up. "There is no one else here. This position is comfortable." This position was comfortable? Li Xiqing suddenly thought of her position. His mouth was dry and his eyes were burning. "It seems that you want to try it." Su Qianxi was dazed, looked up and suddenly blushed. "Pervert." Li Xiqing curled his lips slightly. When he was about to say something, he heard a knock on the office door. "I will deal with you later. Come in." Su Qianxi quickly put her feet down and lay upright. Cheng Yu glanced at the expressions of Li Xiqing and his wife and suddenly felt humiliated. She coughed and said, "Boss, it's all done. Tang Jinghao has already met with people from Shengfeng." "Yes." Luo Zhan said that he caught a hacker hacking into your phone and computer and has taken care of it. "He drove them away?" "Yes." Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow. "That's all? How can that be? We should return the favor." Hearing such meaningful words, Cheng Yu shivered and asked, "What do you mean?" "I asked you to sort out the things a few days ago. Have you done it?" "Yes." "Give them to Luo Zhan and let them steal these confidential information." Cheng Yu was in awe. "Yes." Su Qianxi was secretly shocked, but her admiration for Li Xiqing was even more endless. So insidious, so scary. However, he was so powerful and handsome. Li Xiqing met her gaze and looked down at his watch. "Are you hungry? Let's go eat." "Okay." She got up from the bed and scratched her hair. "What do you want to eat?" "What do you want to eat?" "Hot pot." "No, you're not feeling well. You can eat non-spicy food. Can you stand it?" He glanced at her. She pouted. "I'll just eat a little." "Be good and eat something else." Cheng Yu stood there and wanted to cry. "You can't play like this." His mouth was stuffed with a mouthful of dog food, and his heart was bleeding. "Let's eat McDonald's then." "No, this kind of thing has no nutrition." "Then Pizza Hut." Li Xiqing said, "There's a new kanji restaurant nearby. It's not far. I'll take you there." Okay. Su Qianxi actually had a good impression of the porridge. "Would you like to join us, Assistant Qing?" No, no, no. You guys go ahead. I'll eat by myself." Before eating, she had already been showered with food. If she had to eat with them, she would probably be paralyzed. Watching the couple leave, Qingyu, who was single, said that she was heartbroken. She accepted her fate and ordered takeout with the mobile app, and then continued to work. Not far from the kanji restaurant, Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi walked side by side. Although the rain had stopped, the road was still a bit wet. Chapter 366. They are Tang Jinghao's men. Li Xiqing hugged her and whispered, "Don't be afraid. They are just detectives. They won't hurt us." "They are looking for Tang Menjing?" "Most likely." "You moved Tang Menjing again?" Li Xiqing had given Tang Menjing the house in Jiangzhou. If they were looking for someone, they would definitely go to the house in Jiangzhou. Now they had to follow him. It must be because they couldn't find him in Jiangzhou. That was why they had to do this, right? "Yes, they moved to a place near our house." "It can't be. It can't be the one behind, right?" "Yes." Su Qianxi gasped in shock. "Are you not afraid that they will go there? That is too dangerous. They are not stupid. They must know that you have another house behind our house. The most dangerous place is the safest place." Li Xiqing rubbed her hair. "Your man is not stupid either." Su Qianxi blinked, not quite understanding. Li Xiqing moved closer and said, "They have already looked. They will not go there again in a short time. Besides, there are traps in the house." "Traps?" Su Qianxi's eyes widened. "How did such a high and mighty thing do it?" "No. Rong Rue helped me install it," Li Xiqing explained. "So Rong Rue also knows how to install traps. But isn't he Tang Menjing's gunman? Why would he help you?" "He's my man now." Su Qianxi was even more surprised. "How did you bribe him?" She remembered that this guy was very stubborn and would not be persuaded at all. "Qingyu took care of him." "Ah, Qingyu? Could it be that the two of them would still be together in this lifetime?" The more Su Qianxi thought about it, the more likely it seemed. In her previous lifetime, Rong Rue was really nice to Qingyu, and their daughter was also very cute. Qingyu was busy with work, so Rong Rue dressed the child up as a little princess. The family of three was also happy. "Well, here we are." Li Xiqing took her in. The waiter recognized them at a glance and took them to an antique private room. Su Qianxi ordered seafood porridge. Because it was freshly cooked, it took half an hour for the porridge to be served. She ordered some snacks in between, so when the porridge was served, she was almost full. However, she found that the porridge tasted particularly good. She enjoyed it and drank 2 bowls in one go. When she finished, it was more than an hour later. Accidentally, she ate too much and felt uncomfortable. Leaning on Li Xiqing, she did not want to move. Li Xiqing helplessly supported her and walked out. Li Xiqing felt a bit helpless and helped her out. "Although this one is new, the taste is very good. If you come to Kingstown, you must try the specialties of Kingstown. Otherwise, it would be a wasted trip." A slightly fat middle-aged man led a tall and strong middle-aged man into the restaurant. Li Xiqing, Su Qianxi's Tong and Xiqinged. Qing Li and Hang I Tit I Qinged. Seeming to notice his gaze, Su Qianxi looked up at him. The middle-aged man in front of her had a cold and reserved temperament. When he glanced around, his eyes were like an eagle, full of sharpness. He didn't do it on purpose, it was just a habit. Chapter 367. She smiled politely and nodded. The middle-aged man also nodded slightly at her and quickly moved his eyes away from her, following the fat man. "Do you know him?" Li Xiqing looked down and asked. "No, but he looks a bit familiar." "Yes, Major General of the Army Rong Haiyue." "Oh? Never heard of him. I've only heard of Li Xiao." Li Xiqing's eyes were softer, but he was still expressionless. He said in a disdainful tone, "Ignorant. I'm not in this circle." "It's normal that I don't know him," she said matter-of-factly. As they spoke, they had already left the restaurant. What they did not know was that Rong Haiyue, who had just passed by them, had already stopped and looked at Su Qianxi's back. When they were far away, Rong Haiyue slowly looked away, feeling a pain in his heart. She was really like her. But that girl was Song Yifun's daughter. "Mr. Rong, the room is ready. Come in." "Okay." Since he had stolen the confidential document from Li Xiqing's computer, Tang Jinghao had learned the real strength of the Li family. It was a little more powerful than he had expected, but not too far apart. Knowing the strength of his opponent, Tang Jinghao, who had been worried by Li Xiqing's pretense, suddenly felt relieved. No wonder Xing Feng chose the Tang family instead of the Li family. It turned out that Xing Feng had already estimated the strength of the Li family. Two partners with similar strength, of course, it was safer to work with the more established Tang family. After successfully signing the contract, Tang Jinghao was very happy and gave bonuses to all the employees. Suddenly the Tang family was full of laughter. After hearing about the current situation of the Tang family, Li Xiqing ordered, "You can start. Follow the original plan." His voice was calm, but Qing Yu felt that the man in front of her was extremely dangerous. "Yes, sir." Extreme joy turned to sorrow. Less than 3 days after the bonuses were handed out, Tang Corps received a shocking piece of news. The first batch of materials imported from Germany more than half a month ago was detained at the customs because they were suspected of hiding toxic substances. Seeing that the time was getting closer and closer, the factory could not start because of the lack of raw materials. Tang Jinghao anxiously ran up and down to open up his connections everywhere. However, at this critical moment, Mrs. Tang rushed into the company and cried, "I found our daughter. I found her." Tang Jinghao was supposed to be happy that he found his daughter. However, when he heard his wife's loud voice, his head started to hurt even more. Holding his head, Tang Jinghao said impatiently, "Found it? Where is it?" "It's in Yuxiu behind Li Xiqing's villa. He has another mansion. Menjing is there. She is there." "Really?" Tang Jinghao sat up, a little uneasy. "How did you know?" "Those private investigators you sent out, they took pictures. I couldn't hear their voices, so I went to find a lip reader. He said the most dangerous place is the safest place. He told Su Qianxi himself." Tang Jinghao's mood finally improved. He stood up excitedly. "Quick, send someone to look for him." "No, I want Li Xiqing to go to jail. Now that the evidence is conclusive, I don't believe he can deny it. So what if he is from the Li family? Li Xiqing is going to jail for sure." The third night watch, one night watch was made in advance of yesterday's redress of grievances, and the last night watch will be reserved for the redress of grievances in the daytime tomorrow. Chapter 368. In the morning. When Su Qianxi woke up, there was no one next to her. Stretching and yawning, she got up comfortably and went to the bathroom to wash up. When she went downstairs, Nanny Rong had already prepared breakfast. Li Xiqing came in wearing casual clothes and seemed to be in a good mood. Eating breakfast, Su Qianxi looked at him and asked, "Where did you go?" "In the back." Li Xiqing washed his hands and sat down in front of her. He took a sip of milk and said, "I'll take you to see a good show later." "What show?" "Let's eat first." What Li Xiqing said must be a good show. Su Qianxi finished the bread quickly and took a sip of milk. She could not wait to ask, "What show?" Li Xiqing chewed slowly, wiped the milk off the corner of her mouth and said, "Don't worry. They are not done yet. 2 more minutes." Su Qianxi waited patiently. Li Xiqing took the last sip of milk and looked at his watch. "Okay, let's go." He took Su Qianxi to the back of the house, where Tang Menjing was said to be locked up. Before they got close, they saw 2 police cars and 2 luxury cars parked in front of the house. Su Qianxi's eyes widened and her heart was in her throat. She grabbed Li Xiqing's hand and asked, "What should we do? Have we been discovered? How did they find this place?" "Don't be afraid. It's expected." Li Xiqing rubbed her hair. "Don't let the cat out of the bag. Calm down." Su Qianxi was a bit scared. Looking at him, she felt uneasy. Seeing her expression, Li Xiqing smiled and immediately walked forward with her in his arms. A police officer saw Li Xiqing coming and immediately looked down at the information in his hand. He walked up and said, "Are you Li Xiqing?" "Yes." "We now suspect you of human kidnapping and illegal imprisonment. This is the search warrant." Li Xiqing glanced at it and did not look panicked at all. He arched an eyebrow and said, "Did you find it?" The police officer did not expect Li Xiqing to be so calm. He couldn't help but look at him thoughtfully. "We are still searching. If we find it, you will be sued by the family of the victim." As soon as he finished speaking, a few police officers rushed out of the villa, followed closely by the Tang couple. "Sir, no one's here." Mrs. Tang walked out. When she saw Li Xiqing, she immediately cried, "Li Xiqing, you little bastard! Where did you hide my daughter? Give me back my daughter." Then she was about to hit Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing took Su Qianxi in his arms and took a step back, looking at Mrs. Tang coldly. Seeing this, the policeman hurried to stop Mrs. Tang. "Where did you hide my daughter this time? Give her back to me. Give her back to me." Mrs. Tang cried hysterically like a crazy woman. Tang Jinghao's face was gloomy. He looked at Li Xiqing and said in a deep voice, Li Xiqing. Uncle Tang, I don't think I've done anything wrong to you. How can you say that I've imprisoned your daughter without any evidence? Who said there's no evidence? I have evidence. Mrs. Tang broke free from the policeman, took out her phone, and quickly found the video taken by the detectives. The video showed Li Xiqing's face clearly, including his lips, but not Su Qianxi's face. Li Xiqing's face was expressionless. His dark eyes were extremely cold. Seeing the video, he sneered. Chapter 369. Mrs. Tang felt goosebumps and scolded, "What are you laughing at? The evidence is right here. Do you still want to deny it?" Li Xiqing grabbed the phone and looked at the officer, saying, "Mr. Officer, I now have sufficient evidence to prove that she stalked me and seriously violated my privacy, image and reputation. Mrs. Tang's behavior has seriously constituted a crime of defamation." Mrs. Tang was dazed, but soon her face paled and she yelled, "You bastard, you are slandering me." Li Xiqing ignored her and threw the phone to the officer. The officer gave Li Xiqing a deep look and watched the video from beginning to end. "Mr. Police, don't listen to his nonsense. This is the evidence that he imprisoned my daughter. Look at his lips. He admitted it himself. He locked my daughter up here. Did you find her?" Su Qianxi looked at Mrs. Tang with a hint of sarcasm in her eyes. There should be a limit to making things up. Mrs. Tang was speechless and just stared at Su Qianxi. If it were not for the officer, Su Qianxi had no doubt that Mrs. Tang would slap herself. However, seeing her like this, Mrs. Tang was secretly pleased and continued, "You are not only wasting your time but also the police force. Since we are neighbors, if you apologize to my husband, we won't sue you." Li Xiqing heard that and glanced at Su Qianxi with a smile. Su Qianxi was thrilled. However, seeing the miserable look on Mrs. Tang's face, she felt that she was the worst person in the world. She was in cahoots with Li Xiqing. That was horrible. When did she start to be influenced by Li Xiqing? If they were in a movie, they would definitely be the villains. Mrs. Tang was furious and yelled, little b****, you want me to apologize? Bah. Give my daughter back. Give her back. I'm doing this for your own good. Why are you cursing like this? It's so unpleasant." She shrank behind Li Xiqing and whispered, looking scared, "Come back with me." The officer looked at them deeply and said, "This lady is right. Your evidence has violated the privacy, reputation, and portrait rights of others, and indeed did not find your daughter here. Your evidence is not strong enough." Lip reading, Mr. Police, look at his lips, this kid admitted it himself. If you have anything to say it back at the station. The officer was a bit impatient. Waving his hand, he looked at Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi. "You two come with me." Su Qianxi was a bit nervous. She had never been to the police station before. Was she going in today? Li Xiqing felt her nervousness. He reached out and patted her hand, saying, "Mr. Officer, I'm willing to cooperate, but my wife doesn't seem to like that kind of place very much. I'd better ask my lawyer to talk to you." The officer glanced at Su Qianxi and nodded. As soon as possible. Tang Jinghao did not speak. On the way to the police car, he stared at Li Xiqing. Seeing Li Xiqing nodding at him so casually, he had a bad feeling. He had a strong feeling that he had not only fallen into Li Xiqing's trap. Chapter 370. Seeing the police car driving away, Su Qianxi held Li Xiqing's hand excitedly and exclaimed, "Did you do it on purpose? You're so good." Li Xiqing chuckled, took her in his arms and said, "Let's go." "Where to?" "Grandpa's birthday party is coming up. Let's go pick out a gift for him." Su Qianxi blinked. Grandpa's 70th birthday was half a month after the winter solstice. There were less than 10 days left. She had actually forgotten about it. What should I buy for Grandpa? In his previous lifetime, Li Xiqing had bought his grandpa a very rare glass sungreen jade pendant. It was carved with a 10,000-year-old pine tree, with a parrot resting on it, implying longevity, righteousness, and wisdom. When Grandpa received the gift, he was very happy. And she seemed to have given an oil painting in her previous lifetime, and Tang Minjing led her to be despised by everyone. Although Grandpa did not say anything, Su Qianxi could tell that he did not like the gift. Later on, Su Qianxi learned to cater to what he liked. Grandpa was a Chinese through and through. How could he like foreign things? Thinking about something else, Li Xiqing pinched her face. "What are you thinking about?" Su Qianxi shook her head, but thinking of the past, she still felt a bit down. Li Xiqing went back to the car and took her to a mall. There were not many people in the mall. Occasionally there were people dressed in expensive clothes. Li Xiqing took the elevator to the top floor and walked to a stall selling jade. The stall owner saw Li Xiqing and greeted him. "Mr. Li, is the thing I want ready?" "Yes, it is. I copied it according to your design. Let me show it to you." The boss turned around and squatted down for the whole afternoon. He carefully took out a box from the safe below. The box was locked and the stall owner gently unlocked it with a key. Su Qianxi was immediately attracted by what was inside. It was indeed this thing. The stall owner took out the jade pendant carefully, fearing that he would knock it. Glass green jade was rare, and it was even rarer to see such a perfect one. The jade pendant was about half the size of a palm. The water level was so good that it almost dripped out. It was smooth and exquisite. There was a green pine carved on it. The leaves on the pine were all sun green, and there was a colorful parrot on the branch. A red jade was impressively dotted into an eyeball. The carving was exquisite and lifelike. Below them was the lakeside of Qingshui Lake. A ginseng was impressively carved on it, symbolizing longevity. It was perfect as a birthday gift. This gift was too rare to come by and it was too precious. He was very satisfied. "Wrap it up." The shop owner was overjoyed. He quickly wrapped up the jade pendant and carefully handed it to Li Xiqing. He swiped his card and found that she was looking at a pair of swans. It was not a jade pendant, but a pendant inlaid with 18K gold. The lines were smooth and the pieces of diamonds surrounded the high-ice jadeite. Under the light of the jewelry window, it was beautiful and perfect. "You like it?" Li Xiqing took a closer look. Chapter 371. If one of them dies, the other one will not live alone. The color and shape of this pair of main stones are very similar. It is very rare to find a pair of jade stones that match each other so well. Look at the color of this one, it is exactly the same as this one. It is very difficult to find. The male is on the left and the female is on the right. Since Mrs. Li likes it, you can take it with you. Su Qianxi really liked it, especially after hearing the meaning of the boss. She liked it even more. "Wrap it up," Li Xiqing said. Su Qianxi looked at him suspiciously. "Do you know how to wear it? This is not only a necklace but also a brooch. Mr. Li, you can wear it as a brooch. With this you won't look girly." The shopkeeper hastily took something out from under the table, and with a few twists and turns, turned the necklace into a brooch. Li Xiqing actually didn't like it. It was obviously something that girls would like. Why would he wear it? However, it was rare for Su Qianxi to like something, so she decided to buy it first. Su Qianxi took the brooch, turned around, and put it on the left side of Li Xiqing's coat. "Yes, very handsome." Su Qianxi smiled brightly and put the necklace on her neck. She turned around and asked, "Does it look good?" "Yes," Li Xiqing said without thinking. Su Qianxi pouted. "Perfunctory." Li Xiqing curled his lips and added, "Mrs. Li looks good no matter what." Showing off, the staff of the jade shop were so jealous that they wanted to scratch the wall. The shop owner was experienced. He calmly took Li Xiqing's card, swiped it and respectfully sent the customer away. Su Qianxi walked around the mall but still could not think of anything to give Grandpa. She frowned. "Don't rush. Take it slow. There are still a few days." Thinking of her previous lifetime, every time she gave Grandpa something, he did not seem to like it very much. Otherwise she could use that as a reference. Suddenly Su Qianxi had an idea. She looked up, her eyes sparkling. "Mr. Li, I got it." "Yes. I will make a longevity peach for Grandpa." "Longevity peach?" Yes. She gestured with her hand. "It's a peach this big. It's actually a bun. If I made it myself, would Grandpa be very happy?" "Yes." "This is it then." She breathed a sigh of relief. "But is it too cheap? Should I buy something else?" "How could your kind intentions be cheap? If she personally made something for him, he would treasure it like a priceless treasure." Li Xiqing's eyes became softer as he rubbed her head. "Since you've thought of it, come with me to Oming's place." Oming? So far, Su Qianxi had only seen him a few times. In a real sense, they had only met once. The last time she had a miscarriage and was hospitalized. Yes, he's going to propose to that woman and bring her out to meet people. "That woman? Lily?" Su Qianxi blinked. Lily will not agree." Li Xiqing glanced at her. "You know her quite well. We've been classmates for 3 years after all." More importantly, she clearly knew that Lily did not marry Oming at all. She even died in his hands. The 3rd chapter. I've written a lot in the past 2 days. I tried to update it all at once, but everyone thought I didn't. I tried to redress the injustice, but I was scolded. It's not easy to write a book. Please read it and cherish it. Notice, next Tuesday, 25th, the book will officially go on sale for a fee. There will be 30 to 50 chapters. After that, there will be a minimum of 8,000 chapters. There will be frequent updates. Thank you for your support. Recommending October Night Whaleyong's excellent novel, My Beautiful Wife, See You Tonight. Xiao Xiaoxia cried, since I married you, I've been in trouble every day. Chapter 372. Not a good thing. Li Xiqing reached out and touched her nose. Don't get too close to that woman. You will be led astray. She flinched and held his hand with a smile. I won't. You will teach me well. Li Xiqing was very satisfied with her flattery and put his big hand around her waist. They are in Palace 1. Let's go. Palace 1 was in the center of Kingstown, an entertainment venue owned by O Group. When they arrived at room 888, O Ming was holding a woman in his arms and singing a love song. They were singing Zhang Shui's Lovesickness in the Wind and Rain. It was a classic old song and both of them had good voices, but Luo Zhan was sitting on the side like an idiot. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in, Luo Zhan was happy at first, but when he saw his wife behind him, he suddenly became depressed. She threw herself onto the sofa, her face full of grief and indignation as she shouted, "Why did I have to keep the appointment?" However, no one heard his cry at all. Li Xiqing sat down with Su Qianxi, picked up a pillow and threw it at Luo Zhan's face. Luo Zhan was killed on the spot. After the song, O Ming put down the microphone and walked toward Li Xiqing. "Qianxian, come sing." You Lily called. "I remember you were a microphone hog in high school. Do you know how to sing, actress?" "Yes." Su Qianxi immediately stood up and trotted over excitedly, picking up the microphone that O Ming had just put down. "Come on." The familiar melody sounded, and when O Ming's face appeared on the big screen, Su Qianxi looked even more excited. Yu Lily gestured to her, indicating that she should sing first. A low female voice sounded and the voice was very beautiful. "Keep it simple." O Ming looked at the two women and couldn't help but laugh. He picked up the cigarette on the table and threw one to Li Xiqing, asking, "Have you eaten?" "No." Li Xiqing took the cigarette and let O Ming light it for him. "Well," O Ming took a drag and slowly exhaled. "Let's go eat later." Li Xiqing glanced at him, then his eyes fell on Yu Lily. "Are you serious?" he asked out of nowhere. O Ming bit the cigarette with a smile in his eyes. "Yeah. Your dad won't agree. I'm the one marrying him, not him. He can't control me. By force." "I can't?" Li Xiqing took a puff of the unsmoked cigarette, flicked the ash and said ambiguously, "After getting married, things will be different. F***ck off. I've had her for 3 years and slept with her for 2 years. I'm just missing a certificate. What's the difference?" Luo Zhan leaned over and listened. "That woman's heart isn't with you. She'll run away sooner or later." O Ming was speechless. He took a deep drag of the cigarette and looked into her eyes as if he wanted to suck her in like a cigarette. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about this before. But what if Yu Lily didn't know what to do? If she got married and had children, it would be a different story. "Why don't we coax her to give birth to a child first and then marry her? Isn't that better?" Luo Zhan leaned over and said. O Ming glanced at him and said helplessly, "When I don't wear a condom, she will take medicine." "Then she won't take it if you wear it?" "Nonsense. Why would she take medicine if she wears a condom?" Luo Zhan leaned over and whispered, "Then you wear it and poke a few holes on the condom." Fourth update. All 4 groups were full, and there were still more than 100 messages that hadn't passed the review. It doesn't matter if you can't join. Anyway, I don't plan to create another group. After it's online, there will be a VIP group, and there will be various benefits. Seeing that many people were asking about the fee, 1 chapter equals 1,000 words equals 0.05 yuan equals 5 book coins, 1 yuan equals 100 book coins equals 20 chapters, 1 bottle of mineral water equals 200 book coins equals 40 chapters. If everyone's level is higher, it may only be 3 to 4 book coins per chapter. It's very cost-effective and cheap. After the fee, there will be a minimum of 8 chapters per day. Generally, there should be 10 chapters. Of course, if people think it's too expensive, I can have less. If not, I can have more. Chapter 373. Hearing that, O Ming said, "Insidious." "Good idea." Li Xiqing agreed. "It's best to change her medicine. You are more insidious." Luo Zhan looked contemptuous. "Stop pretending. We are all jackals of the same tribe." "I am not." Li Xiqing pushed him away. O Ming also looked at him contemptuously. "Me neither." Luo Zhan was speechless. After singing a song, Su Qianxi and Yu Lily saw the 3 men together and glanced at each other. Yu Lily looked down. What are they talking about? I don't know. Hey, do you think that Luo Zhan looks gay? He doesn't have a girlfriend and he is so close to them. Pfft. Su Qianxi couldn't help but spit into the microphone. The three men looked over and Su Qianxi quickly put down the microphone and whispered, no way, he looks quite normal. Abnormal, okay? You see, he is also good looking. He is already 26 years old. Why hasn't he been in a relationship? If it is not a physical problem, it is a psychological problem or a brain problem. Ha 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 ha. Su Qianxi laughed mercilessly. The three men quickly dispersed and went to dinner with the two women. However, after Yu Lily said that, Su Qianxi's look at Luo Zhan became a bit strange. She heard that gay people would walk with their legs clamped, so she deliberately walked a little slower to look at his walking posture. She heard that gay people like to wear tight pants, and she heard, Su Qianxi's expression was strange, and Li Xiqing immediately found it. He put his arm around her waist and whispered, what's wrong? Su Qianxi shook her head and coughed. Was she being too obvious? When they arrived at the private room that Oming had booked, when they were ordering, Yu Lily asked casually, does Luo Zhan like sweets? What? Luo Zhan was flattered to be mentioned. Is caramel pudding okay? Oh, okay, thank you, sister-in-law. Su Qianxi silently noted that Luo Zhan liked sweets. Seeing Yu Lily's gaze, she also joined in the line of questioning. Do you usually exercise? Yes. What sports do you like? Swimming, volleyball, tennis? It's over. All of them. Su Qianxi wailed, looking at him with some pity. Hearing Su Qianxi's words, Yu Lily almost laughed out loud. She covered her face with the menu and laughed so hard. Li Xiqing and Oming suddenly understood and couldn't help laughing. Luo Zhan was speechless, but when he saw that everyone was laughing, he felt as if an arrow had been shot in his heart. He roared with grief and indignation, I'm a straight man. The waiter who came in to order couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. Luo Zhan's heart sank. It was bad enough that he was a single dog, but he even had to be questioned about his sexual orientation. His days were 2F** king miserable. He stood up decisively, turned around and left. Oming smiled and asked, hey, where are you going? Toilet. There's a toilet in the room. I'll go outside. Luo Zhan angrily walked to the bathroom outside, unzipped it and fired it into the urinal. At this time, a young man who looked gentle came in from outside. Wearing a blue suit and a pair of rimless glasses, his facial features were handsome and his temperament was clean. He looked a little weak but he was still tall. Luo Zhan glanced at his crotch, then looked at himself and pouted. This is what AF** King Gay is like. His temperament is off the charts. With his size, how could he be considered a man? It's a new week, please vote. La 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 la. Chapter 374. With his size, he could be regarded as a man. The man in the suit clearly felt the gaze from the next door and he was a little scared. He finished it as quickly as possible and did not even dare to shake it off. He just zipped up and turned to wash his hands. Luo Zhan also finished and walked over. When he was washing his hands, he inadvertently glanced at the water stains under the blue suit. While washing his hands, he kindly reminded, dude, your crotch is wet. When the young man heard that, he suddenly shivered and did not dare to wash his hands. He turned off the faucet and immediately turned away. It was a terrible year to meet a pervert in the bathroom. Luo Zhan saw his reaction and was angry, shouting, hey, what do you mean? The young man just pretended not to hear and in a hurry, he did not notice the water on the ground. He slipped and almost fell. Fortunately, he held the door frame or he would have fallen very badly. Luo Zhan saw this scene, was even more angry, and reached out to put his hand on the man's shoulder. The man immediately turned around, slapped his hand away and said angrily, I am a straight man. Luo Zhan was speechless. Suddenly, he felt like thousands of arrows were piercing his heart, making him feel that there was nothing left to live for. Gritting his teeth, Luo Zhan was a little angry, which eye of yours saw that I am gay? The man in the suit had a look of disgust on his face, reached out and slapped Luo Zhan's hand away and hurried away. Damn, what the hell? Luo Zhan cursed and watched him walk in the direction of the box where they were. Yu Lily came out to make a phone call. At a glance, she saw the man and her eyes lit up, shouting, Louis Han. When Louis Han saw her, there was surprise in his eyes, but soon he smiled and said, what a coincidence, you also come here for dinner. Oh, so you know each other? Luo Zhan came up from behind. Sister-in-law, introduce me. Sister-in-law. The smile on Yu Lily's face froze and her face became cold. Who is your sister-in-law? Don't call me that. Luo Zhan was taken aback. Didn't he call her sister-in-law all morning? She also happily answered. Why did she have such a big reaction now? This is my high school classmate Louis Han. Let me introduce you. This is Luo Zhan, Hacker Z. I've heard a lot about you, Louis Han said. Luo Zhan smiled and reached out to him, but Louis Han looked at his hand and frowned, but did not reach out. He glanced at you, Lily, and said, I have a client, so I won't say much. Okay, go to your work. After you, Lily, finished speaking, Louis Han turned around and left, without any intention of paying any attention to Luo Zhan. Luo Zhan was a little embarrassed and angry. Did this kid really think he was gay? *CK. What an injustice. Luo Zhan felt that it was necessary for him to find a girlfriend to calm down. No, he should go to a nightclub and find a beautiful girl to break his virginity. Otherwise, he would be suspected all the time, and his heart would be filled with grief. During the meal, Luo Zhan felt the most aggrieved. Being taken care of by two good sisters and being ridiculed by two good brothers, he could not lose his temper. Otherwise, these two henpecked men would kill him at any moment, making him look like a stuffed biscuit. When O Ming suggested going to the leisure club under his name, Luo Zhan immediately found an excuse to escape. Going downstairs and driving, Luo Zhan saw a familiar figure on the side of the road. Cheng Yu was holding a stack of documents as if waiting for the bus. Luo Zhan's eyes lit up, stopped on the side of the road and shouted, Assistant Cheng, where are you going? Get in the car? Cheng Yu immediately got in the car with the documents. Luo Zhan drove and asked, Where is the car that Lao Er gave you? Oh, don't talk about it. It broke down and was sent to be repaired. Bad luck. Oh. Luo Zhan responded, a little struggling in his heart. After a long while, he turned his head and said, Assistant Cheng, you don't have a boyfriend yet, right? What do you think of me? Cheng Yu was speechless. Luo Zhan smiled brightly, leaned on the steering wheel with what he thought was his most handsome face, bowed his head and asked, I'll treat you to dinner tonight. Do you want a date? Ask you out for a deadhead. Wan Lily, Mr. Luo, are you happy? Luo Zhan, why are you treating me like this? I don't accept it. Chapter 375. Tang Jinghao's detective only saw Li Xiqing's face in the video, and Li Xiqing did not mention a word about Tang Menjing from beginning to end. His original plan to send Li Xiqing to prison failed, and he suffered the consequences of his own actions. Tang Jinghao made a prompt decision and put all the blame on Mrs. Tang. He returned to the company to deal with the company's affairs and try to get his wife out. Finally, after paying a high price to make Li Xiqing's lawyer lose the case, Mrs. Tang came out of the police station 5 days later. This matter had a great impact on the Tang Group. The shareholders held a shareholders' meeting and strongly demanded an explanation from Tang Jinghao. After Tang Jinghao finally appeased the shareholders, he encountered another problem. The raw materials imported from Germany had been approved by the customs, but some of them needed to be detained and released after they were all checked. Tang Jinghao did not dare to disobey. He hurried to show his sincerity and got the materials back. However, at this time, Xingfeng called and asked to ship some of the finished products first. When Tang Jinghao had a headache and asked for 2 more days, Xingfeng's tone changed. I have already ordered this batch of products from you. You said you had them in stock, which is why I gave you such a big order. Now you are telling me that it is not ready yet. How can I explain it to my superiors? You can't say that. It is not the first time we have cooperated with Xingfeng. It's because it's not the first time we've worked together that I trust you so much. The higher-ups originally intended to give it to the Li Group. I gave you such an important order because I think highly of you. Now you're telling me that you can't get it? Don't tell me you've forgotten what was written in the agreement some time ago? Tang Jinghao felt even more headache and quickly said yes. Then I will give you 2 more days. If the goods are not delivered by then, I will consider it as a breach of contract. Tang Jinghao's face changed dramatically and he exclaimed, 2 days? How? How was it possible? Before he finished, the phone had been hung up. Preposterous, preposterous. Tang Jinghao was so angry that he paced back and forth on the spot. He picked up his phone and was about to call back, but the call was immediately hung up. He stomped his feet and simply called the factory that was rushing to work. Hurry up and recruit people. Overtime. We must get the first batch out within 2 days. That penalty fee. Even if he lost his entire company, it still wouldn't be enough. Tomorrow was Grandpa's birthday party, and Su Qinxi finally bought a gift for Grandpa on the last day. Li Xiqing was not back yet. Su Qinxi had dinner, took a shower and studied in the living room. When Li Xiqing came back, it was already past 9 p.m. Seeing him coming back, she put down the book and asked, "Have you eaten?" "Not yet." "Okay, take a seat. I'll heat up some food for you." "Okay." He looked at her softly. "I'll go take a shower first." "In?" After Su Qianxi heated up the dishes, Li Xiqing came downstairs, wearing only a rabbit fur robe. She hugged her thick coral velvet pajamas. Seeing him dressed like this, she asked, "Aren't you cold?" "I'm not cold. You with me?" "Yeah." She sat down. "You haven't finished that thing yet?" "Almost. I'm dealing with the acquisition of Tangkor." "Acquisition of Tangkor?" Su Qianxi's eyes widened. "Tangjing House Tangkor?" "Yes, Tangkor is bankrupt. Kids who have written long reviews can join Lily's harem 5937277013. The administrator will teach you how to do it. If you haven't written a long review, please behave. P.S. Impromptu reviews do not count. Chapter 376. Su Qianxi gasped and asked incredulously, "Why so sudden?" "Not sudden." Li Xiqing looked up, and there was some softness in his deep eyes. "I have been planning for more than 2 months and I just closed the net a few days ago. I took over the order from Shengfeng and Tang Group." It was rare for him to patiently explain to her. His voice was deep and mellow, no different from usual. However, Su Qianxi felt a bit distressed. He had been as busy as a top these days and must be exhausted. It was a few minutes later when he finished. Su Qianxi gasped and felt a little scared. "No way, such a big mess and you dare to take it on." Shengfeng screwed Tang Jinghao over. "Don't let them screw us over too." "Don't worry. The vice president of Shengfeng is Qin." Su Qianxi's eyes widened. "Mom's family?" "Yes, my uncle." "No way." It was the first time that Su Qianxi's brain worked so fast. "You and your uncle set Tang Jinghao up?" Li Xiqing paused and poked her forehead. "Am I such a sinister person in your eyes?" Su Qianxi's face darkened slightly. Su Qianxi nodded without hesitation. Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes and said, "This is called outsmarting him. Tang Jinghao asked for it." "You're lying. How dare you say you are not sinister?" Li Xiqing was in a very good mood. Curling his lips, he finished the last mouthful of soup and waved at her. "Come here." "What?" Although she asked, she still walked over. He pulled her and she fell into his arms. Su Qianxi's heart raced. Looking at his hungry eyes, she already knew what he wanted to do. Sure enough, Li Xiqing put an arm around her waist and said, "Mrs. Li, let's try it in the kitchen." Su Qianxi suddenly felt numb and immediately struggled. "No. Let's go back to the room. I heard it's very exciting. Let's try it." "I heard. It must be O Ming again." In the past few days, because of what he had heard, he had taken her to the living room and the balcony. Su Qianxi was reluctant. But in the end, she still couldn't resist his coercion and was directly pressed against the refrigerator door. In the end, she surrendered under his ferocity. She hung on him, panting for fear of falling. He hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Today is your ovulation period. Let's have a baby, Mrs. Li." Su Qianxi had no time to refuse and was attacked by him again, unable to fight back. Captain Li's 70th birthday was arranged at the only 6-star hotel in Kingstown. The invited guests were all personally selected by the old master himself, and they were all important figures of the older generation. At 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, most of the guests had arrived and the scene was very lively. In the kitchen of the hotel, Su Qianxi took out the peach with a thick pair of heat-resistant gloves and exclaimed, "It smells so good." Li Xiqing smiled. "Grandpa will be very happy to see it." Su Qianxi couldn't help smiling as well. She carefully put the peach on a white porcelain plate and decorated it according to the chef's instructions. Li Xiqing's phone rang. It was Laurel, who was guarding Tang Menjing. Picking up the phone, he heard a hurried voice. "Sir, it's bad. Miss Tang's water broke. I'm afraid she's going to give birth. Weibo has been opened. She will often post new updates and small spoilers on Weibo. After she goes online, she will set up a VIP group. Everyone can follow her content, and the group number will be announced. Weibo name, Uncle Wan Lily. If you can't find him, please search for him, at least 30 chapters. I'll try to post more after 010. I recommend Su Jemo's new book, Hot Little Sweetheart, Big CO Don't Come Here." Chapter 377. Sir, bad news. Miss Tang's water broke. I'm afraid she's going to give birth. Li Xiqing's eyes flashed, so bright and sharp that Su Qianxi couldn't help but look at him. Although he was still expressionless, she could tell from the slight smile on his face that he was in a better mood than before. Okay, have Hunter take her to the first hospital. Yes sir, Laurel said. Hanging up the phone, he looked at Su Qianxi and whispered, Tang Menjing is going to give birth. Su Qianxi's eyes widened, she could not believe it. Only 7 months. She's making trouble every day. Premature birth is expected. Li Xiqing said, picked up his phone and dialed Qing Yu's number. Kingstown First Hospital, Tang Menjing is going to give birth prematurely as planned. Qing Yu immediately calmed down and became excited, shouting, Yes, boss. Seeing him hang up the phone, Su Qianxi asked, Are you going to see it? You'll see it in a bit. What did you do? You'll know in a bit. With a smile on his lips, Li Xiqing was about to say something when he heard someone shouting outside, Xiqing, come out and see us. So many elders are looking for you. Don't hide inside. Are you afraid that people do not know how much you love each other? Was Li Beixing. Su Qianxi blushed slightly, and her heart was overflowing with sweetness. I'm going out. Okay. Su Qianxi nodded with a smile and began to play with the birthday peach in front of her. I want to be the finale. Li Xiqing's smile deepened, reached out to rub her hair and turned to go out. Su Qianxi fixed the decoration and asked the chef to put it away to keep warm. It was cold and she did not want Grandpa to eat a cold birthday peach, which would not be good. After everything was done, Su Qianxi walked out of the kitchen and into the public bathroom outside. In order to make a birthday peach she had been holding back for a long time. When she came out of the bathroom and was washing her hands, a waitress came in. When she saw Su Qianxi she was pleasantly surprised and said, Mrs. Li, right? Yes. Su Qianxi looked at her while washing her hands. Mr. Li was looking for you just now. I think you're in the bathroom. He asked me to bring you to Hall 888 to wait for him. Su Qianxi smiled happily and wiped her hands dry with 2 pieces of tissue. She turned around and said, Okay, thank you. I'll take you there. It's a bit far. Well, thank you. The hotel was very large. In addition to the largest banquet hall, there were countless smaller halls and private rooms on this floor. The waiter took Su Qianxi around a corridor, and there were fewer and fewer people around. Su Qianxi's feet were sore. Looking at the room numbers around her, she muttered, Why is it so far? The waiter smiled and said, Mr. Li said he wants to give you a surprise. You'll know when you arrive. Hearing that, Su Qianxi's smile widened and she quickly followed the waiter to room 888. We're here. I'll take my leave first. Thank you. Su Qianxi thanked him and walked in. However, the room was empty. The cutlery was perfectly placed, and there was no trace of it having been opened. She felt something was wrong and called, Mr. Li? No one answered. Su Qianxi walked in and found a large garbage truck in the corner. How could there be such a thing in a private room of a hotel? Su Qianxi had a bad feeling and wanted to run away. However, a strong force suddenly grabbed her neck. She struggled and her first reaction was to scream. Chapter 378. Kingstown First Hospital. The hospital had been open for decades, and it was not that the hospital had never received a premature birth, but it was the first time that a premature birth could attract so much attention, even for the old doctors who had worked for more than a decade. Outside the delivery room, there were more than 10 people gathered. Although they were separated by a screen, it was obvious that some of them were secretly filming, some were doing a live broadcast, and some were preparing a press release at the last minute. Qing Yu personally came to watch in case of any accidents. God knew how long she had waited for this moment. Tang Menjing was a mistress and everyone had the right to punish her. She had seen her boss being wronged by this woman with her own eyes. It was all because of Tang Menjing that the boss's wife almost divorced her boss. It was all because of this child. Now that the highlight was finally here, Qing Yu was excited. As long as the child was born and a paternity test was done in front of everyone, then Tang Menjing would have nothing to say, right? At that time, the entire Kingstown would know what kind of person Tang Menjing was. The sound of slapping people in the face was simply refreshing. There are too many people. Don't all pile up here. A nurse said impatiently. Go out and wait. What's so interesting about giving birth? Qing Yu consciously shrank to the back. One of the reporters from the news agency gestured for her to keep quiet. There were more than a dozen people at the scene, but no one made a sound. Seeing this, the nurse knew that they could not be driven away and went directly into the delivery room. There were footsteps outside which were somewhat familiar. Qing Yu looked over and saw it was Rong Rui. Seeing that it was him, she froze and shouted, Hey, what are you doing here? Seeing his first love giving birth, he wouldn't come to ruin it again, would he? Rong Rui looked at Qingyu, his sharp eyes slightly softened and said, "I'm here to end it." "End it?" Qingyu repeated. When she came back to her senses, Rong Rui had already taken out a card from nowhere. After swiping the card, he opened the door of the delivery room and walked in. Qingyu's eyes widened and blurted out, "Damn, how dare he!" As soon as Rong Rui pushed the door in, the doctors in the delivery room all looked over. "Hey, you can't just come in. Get out." A nurse shouted in horror and came up to chase him away. But Rong Rui didn't care. He walked up and shouted, "Menjing, it's me." Tang Menjing screamed in pain, but when she heard Rong Rui's voice, her eyes lit up and she shouted, "Rong Rui, Rong Rui." Tears fell uncontrollably. She reached out to him. "Rong Rui, I'm here." "Let him in." "No, this is the delivery room. Get out of here." "No, let him in or I will not give birth." Tang Menjing yelled, her face pale and her forehead covered in cold sweat. The pain made Tang Menjing dizzy, and she could barely see anything. She didn't know how Rong Rui negotiated with the doctor. 10 minutes later, Rong Rui walked over wearing protective clothing and a mask, looking down at her. Tang Menjing's legs were stretched apart. From Rong Rui's angle he could see the blood flowing down. Chapter 379. Every time when she needed him the most he would be there for her. Handsome like a god, he would help her solve everything. However, she was blinded by Li Xiqing, the man who was not destined to belong to her. During the time she was imprisoned she had thought about many things. Many things. If she could do it all over again she would not pester Li Xiqing and would cherish the person in front of her. Fortunately, there was still a chance for her to turn the tables. After giving birth to the illegitimate child, she would settle down and be with Rong Rui. Tang Menjing smiled, holding Rong Rui's hand and called, "Rong Rui, yes." Rong Rui held her hand back, but his eyes were no longer full of love. Tang Menjing was in pain and did not notice the slight change in Rong Rui. The nurse's hands kept pushing her belly. Tang Menjing turned her head and said, "You know, during this time, I've thought a lot." Rong Rui held her hand and did not speak. "After I give birth, when I go back, I will marry you." Tang Menjing gasped, sweating. "Don't talk," the nurse shouted. Tang Menjing held Rong Rui's hand tightly and did not listen to the nurse. With a pale face she struggled to ask, "Okay? Last time you proposed to me I did not say yes. Now I say yes, okay?" Rong Rui held her hand wearing a mask on his face. His eyes were cold and his voice was slow. "No." Hearing that, Tang Menjing widened her eyes and stared at him. Rong Rui's eyes were cold, looking at her. "Rong Rui has been killed by you. Have you forgotten?" Tang Menjing's heart seemed to be clenched tightly, so painful that she could not breathe. Looking at him she felt extremely unfamiliar. Was this Rong Rui? Was this the man who once vowed to protect her for the rest of her life? He once said that whether she loved him or not, he was willing to be with her. He said it with his own mouth. However, at this moment Rong Rui's eyes were cold. There wasn't even the slightest bit of tenderness and love from before. Why did it turn out like this? Tang Menjing's body trembled violently. The doctors and nurses were shocked and shouted, "Do not affect the patient's mood." Rong Rui did not listen and continued, "When you chose Li Xiqing and me and pushed me to the bodyguards, I was already dead. I committed suicide in the villa you lived in. Do you remember?" Tang Menjing was in so much pain that she almost fainted, but her heart ached even more. She screamed, "Ah, scram! Get out!" A doctor pulled Rong Rui up and forcibly separated his hands. He lifted him up and kicked and pushed him out of the room. However, Tang Menjing's breathing became more and more rapid. Clutching the railing of the bed, she cried, Why? Rong Rui's words and attitude had easily shattered the belief that she had always held on to and firmly believed in. Rong Rui. Tang Menjing cried. "Why, did you forget that Rong Rui was killed by your own hands? Have you forgotten? Have you forgotten? Oh no, the patient is having an emotional breakdown and is bleeding profusely." Chapter 380. When Rong Rui was kicked out, Qingyu saw him and immediately walked over. Seeing the blood on his protective suit, she asked, "What's the situation?" "Nothing." Rong Rui was ready to leave. "What the hell?" Qingyu was a little angry and immediately followed. "Then why did you go in? Did you give birth?" "No. You haven't given me the video you promised." "I gave it to Luo Zhan." Rong Rui's voice was a bit cold. He took off his mask and protective suit while walking. "Luo Zhan?" "Yes." Rong Rue took off his clothes, threw them away, and sat down on a chair in the hallway. "You will broadcast it on Weibo. When the DNA comes out, your Mr. Li can be cleared." Qing Yu felt a little angry at his indifference. Her face was red and she turned to leave. However, her hand was suddenly grabbed. Turning her head, she saw Rong Rue's amber eyes staring at her. Her heart pounding, she looked at him. Rong Rue's expression was unclear. He said, I will take responsibility. You don't have to worry." Hearing that, Qing Yu's face was stained with a layer of anger. She threw his hand away, raised her foot in high heels and kicked him hard. She yelled, "Screw you. I don't like men like you." Li Xiqing was surrounded. He was surrounded by elders that he had not seen for a long time, friends of his grandpa, friends of his father, and childhood playmates who always liked to tease him for being a blockhead. After toasting them one by one, Li Xiqing drank a dozen glasses of liquor in a row, and his face was a little red. After Li Xiqing was drunk, everyone asked him to bring his wife out to meet people. When it came to Su Qianxi, Li Xiqing's expressionless face became a bit soft. Some people keenly noticed this and started to make a fuss again. Li Xiqing could not win against them, so he picked up his cell phone and dialed her number. However, after a dozen rings, no one answered. "Wait a minute, I'll go get her." Li Xiqing put down the glass but suddenly thought of something. Don't get her drunk later. She can't hold her liquor well. In addition, she was not a good drinker. After getting drunk in the Maldives last time, he remembered it very well. "Don't worry, I definitely won't force her down. If we can get you drunk today, it will be a success." Everyone burst into laughter. With their assurance, Li Xiqing felt reassured and walked toward the kitchen. However, there was no sign of her in the kitchen. Li Xiqing frowned and asked, "Where is she?" The chefs looked at each other and shook their heads. He picked up his phone and called again, but no one answered. He looked around and did not find Su Qianxi, which made him feel a bit panicked. There were only a few places she could have gone to. She didn't pick up her phone and she couldn't be found either. What the hell was she doing? Ming was hiding in a corner with Yu Lily. When he saw Li Xiqing walking back and forth a few times, he finally couldn't help but ask, "Hey, what are you doing?" "My wife is missing, help me find her." Ming snorted disdainfully. "You're a grown man and you're still afraid of getting lost? Did he go to the toilet? The one with the surname Yu, go look for him." "Oh, wait a minute." Yu Lily walked to the bathroom to look for him. Li Xiqing's heart inexplicably sped up, a feeling he had never felt before. Chapter 381. The wind was howling and it sounded like there was water. Li Xiqing called, "Su Qianxi?" There was no answer. Li Xiqing looked at the phone and found it was Mrs. Li. However, why was no one saying anything? "Where are you?" Li Xiqing asked, but there was still no answer. The phone was hung up and Li Xiqing was upset. When he was about to call again, he received an MMS message. Looking at the picture, it was a dark night with bright lights. It was the Kingstown River. Clicking on the download, it clearly showed that under the bridge, a woman was lying. Judging from her clothes and figure, it was definitely Su Qianxi. Li Xiqing's pupils shrank and Ming took a deep breath. Before he said anything, Li Xiqing's phone rang. It was the number that sent the MMS message, Kingstown. He picked it up and heard a hysterical voice, "Li Xiqing." There was madness in the voice, and the familiar loud voice was hoarse and unpleasant. "It's you." Mrs. Tang laughed. "Are you surprised to see your wife in my hands?" Li Xiqing's jaw tightened, and his cold face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, looking frighteningly dangerous. "What do you want?" His tone sounded calm, but it was a bit more emotional than usual. Mrs. Tang sensed it and smiled even more proudly. "Don't you know what I want? I asked for my daughter for so long and I gave you time. You did not give me back my daughter, so I had to invite your wife over to educate her." Li Xiqing gritted his teeth and gestured at Ming. Years of tacit understanding made Ming understand immediately, and he arranged for someone to go to the Kingstown River to find Su Qianxi. "I have sent your daughter to the hospital. She is in the first hospital. Where are you?" "I will send someone to take you to see your daughter." "Bullshit. Do you think I will believe you? You cunning bastard. Don't think that I will fall into your trap. You are really powerful. Tang Jinghao has lived for so many years, but he was also defeated by you. What? Aren't you very proud? Come and take your wife back by yourself. If you come alone, I will give you a big gift." Ming widened his eyes and shook his head at him. "Don't go." Li Xiqing acted as if he did not see Ming's intention. Without hesitation, he asked, "Okay, where are you?" Mrs. Tang quickly gave him an address and said, "Come alone. Don't call the police. I have many men here. If you call the police, I can't guarantee what will happen. Alright, give me 20 minutes. That place was very remote. It would take at least half an hour to get there from here. Ah, you wish. 15 minutes. If you're any slower, I'll have to hire someone to serve her well. Disgusting. The anger in Li Xiqing's heart erupted like a volcano. However, at this time he could only take a deep breath and say, "Okay, I'll be right there." "Don't come over. They have guns." A sharp female voice came. It was Su Qianxi. Li Xiqing's heart was about to jump. His calmness, which had been like a snow mountain for thousands of years, suddenly collapsed under Su Qianxi's scream. Chapter 382. Li Xiqing was so anxious that his eyes were red. Hearing the phone being hung up, he suddenly did not know what to do. Ming had known him for so many years and had never seen him like this. He was a bit dazed. But soon he went up and restrained him, yelling, "Li Xiqing, calm down." Li Xiqing's hands were trembling slightly. It was so slight that even he did not notice it. However, Ming clearly noticed it. Holding Li Xiqing's hands, Ming was terrifyingly calm. "Li Xiqing, look at me." Li Xiqing looked up and suddenly grabbed Ming with great strength. He said, "Ming, I'm going out for a while. Don't tell Grandpa or anyone else about this. I'll be back soon with my wife." After that, he left Li Xiqing's hands and ran toward the elevator. Li Xiqing's mind was blank, and the only thing left in his mind was the string of numbers. 15 minutes, 15 minutes. Su Qianxi's sudden yell startled everyone around her without any warning. The men watching her from both sides came up and covered her mouth. Mrs. Tang hung up the phone and kicked Su Qianxi hard, yelling, "Little bitch, shut up." Su Qianxi flinched and struggled. However, both his hands and feet were bound together. No matter how much he struggled, he couldn't move an inch. "Be good, and maybe I won't do anything to you. As long as your man gives me my daughter, I won't let anyone rape you. How about it? Isn't it a good deal?" Su Qianxi only felt a chill coming from all directions. Shaking her head desperately, she was surrounded by fear. "No, I can't. Nothing is impossible." Mrs. Tang raised the gun in her hand and patted Su Qianxi's face. She said with a smile, "Now you're scared? Beg me. Weren't you very arrogant at the door of the house? Beg me and I will let you go." Su Qianxi's tears fell and she curled up, biting her lower lip and staring at her. Mrs. Tang sneered, "You're quite stubborn." Then she looked at the man next to her and asked, "Is Monkey here?" "On the way." Mrs. Tang sneered at Su Qianxi, raised the gun and wiped it. Looking relaxed, she asked, "Have you ever heard of HIV?" Su Qianxi was stunned. "HIV?" Su Qianxi's pupils shrank as fear and panic engulfed her. "This was... It seems that you know what this is." Mrs. Tang raised the gun and slowly loaded it. Pointing the black muzzle at Su Qianxi, she suddenly pushed it forward. Bang. Bang. Su Qianxi was so scared that she burst into tears. She immediately looked away, her body trembling because of the shock. The men laughed with Mrs. Tang. Su Qianxi gritted her teeth to stop herself from crying. Her body trembling, she stared at them with her dark eyes. Mrs. Tang enjoyed the look on her face. She stood up and kicked her. "What are you staring at, you little bitch?" She did not even dare to scream and curled up into a ball. "Why aren't you shouting? Keep shouting. Keep shouting." Mrs. Tang kicked Su Qianxi's legs and waist in high heels. Chapter 383. Perhaps because there was no response, Mrs. Tang felt a bit bored. Pursing her lips, she stopped and said, "Why is Monkey not here yet? It's been 3 minutes. I gave him 15 minutes. When he comes, he will think I'm too merciful if he doesn't see this little B*TCH being F*Ked. What did they want to do? What did they want to do?" Su Qianxi clenched her legs and tried to curl up. Mrs. Tang clearly saw her intention and sneered, "It's useless." A skinny man drove a motorcycle over and quickly stopped nearby. Su Qianxi felt cold and desperate, wrapping her tightly. This man must be Monkey the old woman had mentioned. This was the highway leading to the edge of the city. The vehicles coming here must be ready to go out of the city. At this moment, she could only hope that someone would pass by and save her before they did it. However, at this time it was already dark and the weather was so cold. Would someone really pass by and save her? The possibility was almost zero. "Boss, I didn't expect that after so many years of seclusion you would come back. Our gang has been looking forward to your return. In the past few years without your leadership, our performance has been getting worse day by day." Performance? A bunch of thieves. Talking about performance? Mrs. Tang used to be a thief. She had been locked up for a few years because of stealing. Later she somehow hooked up with Tang Jinghao and became the wife of a rich family. Sure enough, a dog could not change its habit of eating sh*t. Su Qianxi knew it clearly and was full of disdain. Hearing Monkey's words, Mrs. Tang sneered, "Didn't you see the news? My man is bankrupt and my daughter is missing. Don't you think I'm back, you cheese?" Monkey was a bit surprised and said, "Isn't your daughter very popular? Look at this." Su Qianxi heard Weibo being refreshed. Monkey said, "Your daughter failed to seduce Li Xiqing and got f***ed by this foreign man. This is a hot topic on Weibo. It was posted less than an hour ago. Look, more than 600,000 likes and 200,000 comments." Looking at the video, Mrs. Tang's face became paler and paler. This was the video that was hacked by Rong Rue in Li Zhao's study. How could there be more? Why is he on Weibo again? The latest news: your daughter has given birth. She had a cesarean section due to massive bleeding. Hey, what are you doing? That's my cell phone. Monkey shouted. Mrs. Tang picked up the phone and threw it at Su Qianxi's face. Su Qianxi's face was numb, and the dazzling light came into her eyes. She looked down at the text on the screen. Post-cesarean section, no blood relationship with the Li family. Monkey walked over to pick up the phone, but when he saw Su Qianxi's face, his eyes widened. "Boss, the surprise you said for me is this girl? Wow, so beautiful." Chapter 384. She was sick. HIV? Su Qianxi's face paled even more. She screamed and struggled, "Go away. Go away." Monkey licked his lips and chuckled. That woman was so king wicked. She did not even tell me that she was sick. I did not even wear a condom. *ck. Now no one in the industry dares to accept my business. Wait, don't tell me you gave me such good stuff because I'm sick? Otherwise, do you think you would have a chance? Ha 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 ha, it was worth it. Then he was about to lift Su Qianxi up. Mrs. Tang immediately held him down and said coldly, "What are you doing?" "Getting a room." "What do you mean get a room?" "We'll do it here." A man said as he threw a small bottle to him. "Eat this. It'll help you ward off the cold and make you feel good." Monkey was even more excited. He rubbed his hands and said, "Do you want something wild? Oh, this will do." He picked up the bottle, opened the can and swallowed it. Then he could not wait to take off his clothes. Su Qianxi clearly saw that under the monkey's clothes, there were dense red spots, which looked scarlet and scary. Mrs. Tang took out her cell phone and pointed the camera at them. Su Qianxi did not notice what Mrs. Tang was doing. She screamed in horror and tried to shrink back, begging, "No, please, I can give you money. I can treat you. I can give you however much you want. Don't touch me. I beg you." Monkey took the medicine and it soon began to work. His eyes were bright, and he could not wait to untie Su Qianxi's feet. "Help. Is there anyone? Help me." Su Qianxi screamed, her voice extremely shrill and loud. Desperation was overwhelming. Su Qianxi had never been so scared. Even when she was pushed into the water by Tang Menjing in her previous lifetime, she had never been like this. Torture, desperation, humiliation, anger, but there was nothing she could do. The rope on her feet was untied. Su Qianxi's first reaction was to kick Monkey in the face. "Oh, that smells good. I like it." Monkey chuckled and rushed over. Satisfied, Mrs. Tang stopped the video and sent it to Li Xiqing. The black luxury car sped through the highway, scaring many drivers away from it. Behind the car was a line of traffic police, but Li Xiqing still had no intention of stopping. 15 minutes, 15 minutes. 13 minutes had passed, but there was still some distance to go. Li Xiqing was so anxious that his eyes were red. It was the first time in his life that he was racing on the road, the first time that he was chased by the traffic police, and the first time in his life that he was so anxious to do something. Soon, soon, soon. "Wait for me, you must wait for me." Pushing the accelerator to the maximum, the speed soared to 300 kilometers per hour, but it was still not enough, not enough. For the first time, Li Xiqing hated that he was not driving a sports car. Could he go faster, faster? Just at the intersection ahead, Li Xiqing saw a beam of headlights shining over and was shocked. While braking, he madly honked the horn and made a quick U-turn. The car instantly twisted and drifted, and the tires made a loud friction sound on the ground. Chapter 385. The winter in the south was always not as cold as that in the north. At this time, the capital was covered with snow, but it was a rare sunny day in Kingstown. It was the second time that Rong Highway came to the Kingstown River. The first time was 22 years ago when he begged her to go back with him. She cried and called him brother, begging him not to, but he was so angry that he did something irreversible. For 22 years she seemed to be quiet, but he knew that she always hated him. Stepping on this land again, Rong Haiyue's mood was extremely complicated. More than 20 years ago, these lights were not installed here. There were large patches of grass and people could not be seen at all. A sharp cry pulled Rong Haiyue back from his thoughts. He opened the door and got out of the car. Suddenly a cold wind blew over the river. Rong Haiyue looked not far from where the sound came from. He did not see anything. Listening carefully, it seemed that there was no scream. Walking casually, Rong Haiyue walked forward. His heart was as calm as still water. Help. Is there anyone? Help me. A sharp cry for help suddenly entered his ears, causing a large wave to suddenly appear on the still water. Rong Haiyue followed the sound and saw a few people standing in the distance. He shouted, "What are you doing?" This voice was like the sound of nature to her. Kicking her legs, she shouted, "Help, help." Rong Haiyue recognized the voice. Was it Song Yifun's daughter? The girl who spoke sweetly to the boy of the Li family in the kanji shop last time. Blood rushed to his head. Rong Haiyue strode over and shouted, "Let her go." Damn it, where did this old turtle come from? Trying to be a hero? The two men next to him cursed and turned to face Rong Haiyue. Mrs. Tang was also very angry. Kicking Monkey, she shouted, "Hurry up." Monkey was a bit scared and said, Wait, I haven't found the feeling yet." Rong Haiyue rushed up and knocked one of them down without any explanation. He grabbed him and then kicked the other man. His movements were smooth, bold, and ruthless. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a martial artist. Monkey was even more terrified. Seeing this, Mrs. Tang yelled, "You do what you do. I'll deal with this guy." With that, he walked forward, raised the pistol in his hand and shouted, "Don't move." When Rong Haiyue saw the gun, he threw the man away, raised his hands and stopped moving. Su Qinxi recognized that he was Rong Haiyue. She was a bit surprised, but at this moment she had no time to care about anything else. Looking at the monkey in front of her, she gritted her teeth and whispered, "Do you want money? I can give you money. 1 million, is that enough?" Monkey was a little moved. He looked at her and asked, "Really?" She was pleased and continued to tempt him. "My husband is Li Xiqing. He is very rich, the richest man in Kingstown. Have you heard of him? Let me go and I will give you money. If 1 million is not enough, then 5 million, enough for you to spend for the rest of your life, okay?" Mother asterisk cur. Mrs. Tang cursed and stepped on Su Qinxi's foot. Chapter 386. Monkey was a bit moved. Although this woman was beautiful, women were everywhere. 5 million, he had never seen so much money in his life. Mrs. Tang was furious and yelled, "Monkey, what are you waiting for?" "I am Mrs. Tang. It's only 5 million. I'll give it to you. When Li Xiqing comes, you won't have the chance to enjoy such a beautiful woman." The two men who had been knocked down by Rong Haiyue had already climbed up and rushed at him. "Don't believe her. The Tang family is bankrupt. The Tang family has long been acquired by the Li family. She is nothing. If she had money, why would she go to such a cheap woman like you?" Su Qinxi yelled. At the same time, the two men behind Rong Haiyue surrounded him. One grabbed his neck and the other went around to his front and punched him in the stomach. Mrs. Tang was furious. Turning around, she walked towards Su Qinxi, grabbed her hair and slammed her against the railing. "Little bitch." His head banged against the stone, making a dong-dong sound. Rong Haiyue took a solid punch, but when Mrs. Tang turned around, he slammed his head against the man in front of him. Grabbing the hand behind him, he pulled Rong Haiyue over and hit the man in front of him. Mrs. Tang felt something was wrong and immediately turned around, but Rong Haiyue had already rushed over. Startled, she stepped back and Mrs. Tang's hand shook. Bang! A loud gunshot rang out. Ah! Su Qinxi was dazed. Hearing the gunshot, she trembled, especially when she saw the blood dripping down. Her eyes rolled back, she collapsed and lost consciousness. Mrs. Tang was scared and immediately pushed Rong Haiyue away. She looked down at the blood on her hand. Throwing the gun away, Mrs. Tang's hand was shaking. "I killed someone." Mrs. Tang stared at Rong Haiyue. Rong Haiyue staggered, his face pale. Covering his bleeding arm, he picked up the gun in his hand. He was so calm that he did not look like someone who had been shot. He said, "Let her go." *CKU. Someone behind him shouted and threw Rong Haiyue to the ground. Rong Haiyue fell hard to the ground and the gun in his hand flew out. Not far away a car drove over. Mrs. Tang was shocked and yelled, "Someone's coming." A few cars surrounded them from the left and right. They were still quite a distance away. Mrs. Tang was shocked. It must be someone sent by Li Xiqing. Damn it. Then he decisively went forward and lifted Su Qianxi, who had passed out. I told him to come alone, but he called so many people. He's forcing me to kill her. Mrs. Tang was fat, but she was strong. She lifted Su Qianxi to the railing of the bridge. Rong Haiyue was pressed down and the man sat on him and punched him hard. Seeing this, his heart skipped a beat and he shouted, "What do you want to do?" Die. Mrs. Tang threw her hard and Su Qianxi's body quickly fell. Soon there was a splash. When Rong Haiyue saw Su Qianxi being thrown into the water, the pain in his body seemed to disappear. There was only one thought in his mind: save her, save her. Chapter 387. 6 cars stopped and surrounded the place. Mrs. Tang had nowhere to run, and the 4 of them were arrested. "Where is she?" the leader of the group yelled. Mrs. Tang sneered, "Who is it? I don't know what you are talking about." "Boss, there is blood on the ground." Someone yelled. We did not find Mrs. Tang. There was blood on the ground, but no one was hurt. Looking around, a horrible idea suddenly came to his mind. The leader of the Li family immediately yelled, "Get into the water and find her." The black Maybach hit the railing and Li Xiqing lost consciousness. He did not know how long it took for him to wake up. He was surrounded by traffic police and people. Seeing the cracked windshield, Li Xiqing moved and wanted to start the car again, but he could not. Finding his phone, he opened the door. Li Xiqing had a terrible headache. Blood was dripping from his forehead and he felt itchy. Wiping it off, he stumbled in that direction. Almost there, almost there. Li Xiqing picked up his phone and immediately saw the message from Mrs. Tang. Running as fast as he could, he clicked on the download. However, he was so dizzy that he almost fell several times. Behind him, there were cars following him. Li Xiqing's mind was muddled and he could not hear what they were saying. Stumbling for more than 200 feet, he finally saw several cars belonging to the Li family. At the same time the download was finished. A heart-wrenching scream came from the phone, and Li Xiqing's heart skipped a beat. People on the riverside all looked over. Seeing Li Xiqing in this state, the Li family was shocked and hurried to hold him. "Mr. Li?" Looking at the video on the phone, Li Xiqing became more conscious and gloomier. "Where is she?" No one answered, but at the same time, a loud cry came from the river, "We did not find Mrs. Tang." The lights of the cars were still on. Li Xiqing glanced at the ground and the pool of blood was shocking. "What are you looking for?" "She is dead." Mrs. Tang laughed loudly. "Li Xiqing, you forced me to do this. You've ruined the Tang family's business and Tang Menjing's best years. Aren't you great? Come on, let's continue." Staring at the pool of blood on the ground, Li Xiqing breathed heavily and his ears were ringing. "What are you looking at? Even the Heavenly King wouldn't be able to survive a shot to the heart. If you want to find it, go into the water. It's right there. Coward, you don't dare, right?" "Ah." Mrs. Tang laughed arrogantly. Her voice was like a devil's voice, echoing in their ears and echoing with crazy provocation. 2 more people jumped into the water to help with the salvage. Li Xiqing heard the sound of the water and suddenly went crazy. His first reaction was to rush toward the river. The people around him turned pale with fright. They quickly held him down and shouted, "Someone's going down, he's going down." Li Xiqing seemed to have calmed down, and the man's voice became softer. "For people have gone down. If you go down like this, you will only get yourself killed. Do you want Mrs. Tang to see your dead body when she comes back?" Perhaps the man's words worked. Li Xiqing calmed down. When he let go of the man, Li Xiqing rushed toward Mrs. Tang. A solid fist fell on Mrs. Tang's face. Mrs. Tang screamed and leaned back. She was caught again. Chapter 388. As he spoke, he kicked her in the stomach. "Mr. Li, you will kill her." The people around him were anxious. 2 men tried to pull him back, but he was like a wild horse and they could not stop him at all. Li Xiqing had completely lost his mind. Punching and kicking, he hit Mrs. Tang so hard that she bent over. Li Xiqing's eyes were bloodshot, and his body kept moving. It took 4 men to subdue him. Suddenly, a low moan came from behind. It was the sound of a man's soul, which seemed out of place at this moment. A tall and straight soldier came up and stammered with a red face, "Boss, this person seems to have taken medicine, you see." Hearing that, Mrs. Tang sneered in pain. Everyone's gaze was attracted to her. She opened her mouth, revealing her teeth that had been dyed red with blood. Her voice was filled with madness and cruelty, like the curse of a demon. I wanted to let that little bitch enjoy herself, but I didn't expect you to bring so many people. I had no choice but to kill her in advance. It's you who killed your wife. Li Xiqing was even angrier, but at this moment he calmed down. His eyes were as cold as frost, making Mrs. Tang's heart tremble. Since that's the case, keep it for yourself and enjoy it slowly. Li Xiqing's voice was cold, and Mrs. Tang's face suddenly paled. Take them to the car and let Mrs. Tang have fun. Yes, sir. Two men took Mrs. Tang to one of the cars. Mrs. Tang then realized that Li Xiqing was not joking. No, you can't. Li Xiqing, you little bastard, you will get what you deserve. You will definitely get your retribution. You will be struck by lightning and you will not have a good. Before he finished speaking, he was stuffed into the car. Monkey was also stuffed in at the same time. One of them wisely drove the car to a remote place. The rest of Mrs. Tang's men trembled and said weakly, Monkey has AIDS. Her hands were tied. She might have woken up, but she might not have. The feeling of suffocation and coldness swept over her. She only felt it difficult to breathe, as if there was water flowing into her respiratory tract, so uncomfortable, so familiar. Rong Haiwei managed to catch her in the water and dragged her with all his strength. Fortunately, there was an underwater staircase not far away. Otherwise, Rong Haiwei could not guarantee how long he could last. Because of the cold weather, she was wearing too much. A thin down jacket that could hold water easily, a thick knitted sweater, and a long dress with bottoms. Rong Haiwei noticed the cause of the strain and smiled bitterly. Crossing his hands, Rong Haiwei pressed on her chest. After about 7 or 8 times, she spat out a mouthful of water. She seemed to have regained consciousness. She tried to open her eyes, but the pain in the back of her head seemed to be connected to her eyes, and she could not open them. Rong Haiwei saw that she spit out the water and breathed a sigh of relief. He wanted to drag her up, but the injury on his hand was very unbearable. It was so painful that he could not lift a finger. Chapter 389. Rong Haiwei clearly noticed that his strength was getting weaker and weaker, and his head was getting dizzier. But he could not fall yet. This girl who looked very similar to Rong Xian, her facial features were exquisite. Although a bit pale, the outline was almost exactly the same as Rong Xian when she was young. Song Yifun's daughter. Rong Haiwei's eyes were slightly red, and he laughed at himself. After resting for a while, Rong Haiwei helped her up and said guiltily, I'm sorry. Looking away, he took off her down jacket that was bulging because of the water. Su Qianxi clearly felt that someone was taking off her clothes, but she could not muster any strength. She struggled to raise her hand, trying to resist. However, her hand was only slightly raised, and before it touched the intruder, it had already fallen. Don't touch me. No, tears slid down her eyes, but she could not muster any strength to resist. The sweater was also taken off. Her heart trembled as if struck by lightning, painful, numb, sour, and hot. No. She tried her best to squeeze out a little sound, but it was like a mosquito buzzing. Rong Haiwei could not hear what she was saying at all. Throwing the sweater away, Rong Haiwei quickly took off the coat that was dragging him down and said, Don't be afraid. It will be fine soon. Hearing this, Su Qianxi felt even more desperate. She suddenly felt her body was lifted, but then, no, please, don't. Her consciousness completely disappeared. Rong Haiwei carried her on his shoulder, feeling that she was talking in her sleep. He climbed up as fast as he could and went ashore. The cold wind blew at night and Rong Haiwei shivered, unable to help but shiver. Climbing up with difficulty, Rong Haiwei's legs were shaking terribly. No, he had no strength left. Rong Haiwei put her down and stumbled to the side of the road. At the same time, a van drove over and the headlights were dazzling. Rong Haiwei staggered over and it became darker and darker. He could not stand still, but there was an inexplicable strength in his heart. He moved extremely slowly to the middle of the road, waving his arms weakly. Seeing the van stopped, Rong Haiwei finally breathed a sigh of relief. The door opened and a man in his 40s or 50s came out. Seeing him like this, he quickly held Rong Haiwei. Help! There is someone behind. Save her. I am a Major General Rong Haiwei. Report. I found some clothes. There are women and men. Being held down by several people at the same time, Li Xiqing could not move at all. Hearing that, he looked up and immediately saw a long beige down jacket. Let me go. Li Xiqing said coldly. The people next to him looked at each other and let him go. Li Xiqing went up and took the wet clothes. It really belonged to Su Qianxi. This morning he had personally helped her put on the down jacket. Also that white sweater. At the same time there were also men's clothes. Seeing the man's coat, Li Xiqing somehow felt a bit familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere before. An officer's certificate? Li Xiqing's eyes flashed and he snatched it. The name Rong Haiyue popped into his eyes. Chapter 390. So cold, her whole body was so cold. Su Qianxi felt as if a few long centuries had passed, and her whole body was in pain. The back of her head hurt, her limbs, waist, and even her muscles hurt so much that she was about to go crazy. Cold and hot. It was so uncomfortable that Su Qianxi could not help whimpering and moaning. Vaguely, she felt as if someone had pasted something cold on her forehead, and she fell asleep again in a daze. When she opened her eyes again, it was bright. On the wall not far in front of her, there was an electronic clock, and the time was 17:17. Someone was watching TV in the next bed and the nurse was giving the person on the left and 4. Seeing Su Qianxi woke up, she reached out and touched her forehead. Still a fever, but you will be fine after you wake up. Su Qianxi was a bit dazed. She moved her body and felt pain all over. He let out a low moan and felt his entire body heating up. Do you want some water? The nurse poured her a cup of hot water, walked over, helped her up and fed her. How do you feel? Su Qianxi's head was terribly dizzy. When she raised her hand, her muscles were in pain. It hurts? You have a fever of 39.8 degrees. Of course it hurts. The nurse put her down and said, fortunately, your brain is not damaged. The person who came in with you was not so lucky. He is still in the intensive care unit. You came in with me? Oh, you don't know? The nurse changed her medicine and said, yesterday a kind-hearted uncle sent you here. I thought that person was your father or some relative. He looked to be in his 40s. He was shot and lost a lot of blood. He even dragged you out of the water. Otherwise you would have been dead. Su Qianxi immediately thought of that person and whispered, Rong Haiyue? Oh yes, that's the name. I've called his wife to come over. The nurse changed the water. I will get the medicine for you. Thank you. Su Qianxi's voice was as low as a mosquito. His body felt as if it was being pulled, accompanied by waves of heat waves that assaulted him. Su Qianxi subconsciously moved her legs. The pain in his crotch was even more intense than the pain in his hand. With unspeakable fear and despair in her heart, she struggled to turn over, biting her fist and burst into tears. She was raped by that monkey with AIDS. Ever since she was a child she rarely got sick. She had never had such a high fever before. Was she also infected with HIV? What should she do? Was she about to die? But she was only 21 years old. She didn't want to die. She still wanted to give birth to Mr. Li's child. She still wanted to celebrate Grandpa's birthday. She still wanted to live a little longer. The more she thought about it, the more she couldn't stop her tears. Curling up, her shoulders trembled. This was an incurable disease. No medicine could cure him, and he would die a horrible death. In the face of sudden death, Su Qianxi was caught off guard and lost her mind. What would she do? What would she do? Su Qianxi bit her fist and sobbed, not daring to cry out loud. When the nurse came back, she was shocked to see her crying like that. What's wrong? Is it very uncomfortable? Here, take the medicine. Su Qianxi shook her head and was quickly helped up. The nurse poured her some hot water. Su Qianxi held a dozen pills of different colors and found it difficult to swallow. Chapter 391. Retching a few times, she spat out some stomach acid and nothing else. Since noon yesterday, she had only drunk a glass of water. She was so dizzy that not long after she lay down, she fell asleep again. When she woke up again, it was already past 8 p.m. Su Qianxi felt that her hand was held and moved, waking up the man who had fallen asleep. He reached over and touched her forehead and then himself, frowning. Looking at him, she was a bit dazed. At this moment, Li Xiqing had 2 dark circles under his eyes, and even his chin was a little blue. His hair was messy and he had changed his clothes, but he still looked a little dispirited. There was a piece of gauze on his head just above his left eyebrow. However, as soon as she realized it was him, she pursed her lips and tears of grievance immediately fell. He was scared and asked softly, "Are you feeling bad? What's wrong?" She burst into tears and grabbed his hand. It hurts all over." Li Xiqing frowned and reached out to wipe away her tears. However, she suddenly shrank back and yelled, "Don't touch me. HIV could be transmitted through fluids." Su Qianxi still knew this common sense. However, after avoiding his hand, she felt even more wronged and burst into tears. Biting her lower lip, she sobbed. He paused and looked at her. What's wrong? His deep and cold eyes were filled with worry. She finally couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. Grabbing his hand, she said, Mr. Lee, I've been raped, I've got AIDS, I'm probably going to die. I might not be able to be with you anymore, not ever again in the future. However, when the words were on the tip of her tongue, she could not say it. Holding his hand, she cried like a child abandoned by her parents, desperate and sad. He helped her up, held her in his arms, and gently patted her back. She wiped her tears away with her sleeves, not letting them fall on him, and gently leaned over. Grabbing his neckline, she smelled him greedily, but her heart was even more sour and painful. It's okay. That old woman has been arrested for intentional homicide. I will ask Xing Shiming to help me with the case. I will definitely get a heavy sentence. Xing Shiming was the most famous mouth in Kingstown. With him, even if Mrs. Tang had 3 heads and 6 arms, she would be sentenced to at least 10 or 20 years. How did you find me? Su Chenxi asked in between sobs. I found you. Touching her head, his deep voice was soft and gentle. Eat something. Grandpa just brought you porridge. He was going to stay with you, but I drove him away. She chuckled and patted him. You are so naughty. If Grandpa knew you said that, he would definitely beat you up. He held her hand and tightened his arms around her. Mrs. Lee, yes. I thought I would never see you again. Li Xiqing's voice trembled and his arms tightened. Fortunately, you are fine. Fortunately. Chapter 392. Okay. He took 2 pillows and put them behind Su Chenxi to make her more comfortable. Then he went to get her some porridge. Su Chenxi hugged the quilt, and her eyes couldn't help but be filled with tears. Looking at him, she felt her heart wrench. Li Xiqing had never been so nice to anyone before. Even his grandpa had never been treated like this. He loved her. However, she couldn't afford it. Li Xiqing, Su Chenxi bit the quilt and whispered. He did not look back and responded, yes? His voice rose, and there was the joy of surviving a disaster in his deep voice. Su Chenxi heard his joy and hugged the quilt even tighter, calling again, Li Xiqing, yes. He looked back at her and found that she was already in tears looking at him. Walking over with the hot porridge, he gently put it on the table and said gently, It's okay. Don't cry. Then he reached out to wipe away her tears like before. Su Chenxi dodged and buried her head in the quilt. Her tears fell into the quilt. He thought she was scared after the event. But no, she was not afraid of that, not. Good girl, eat some porridge. He reached out and gently lifted her face, scooped up a mouthful of porridge and put it to her mouth. Su Chenxi opened her mouth and drank it gently. Her fever had just subsided a bit, but she did not have a good appetite. It took her more than 10 minutes to finish the bowl of porridge. Li Xiqing was not impatient at all. He gave her another bowl and forced her to eat it. She forced herself to eat the second bowl, but in the end she really couldn't eat anymore, so he gave up and put it aside. I need to go to the bathroom. Okay. He picked up the down jacket he had brought for her and put it on for her. Then he lifted the quilt and carried her to the bathroom. This was a single VIP room with its own bathroom. After draining the water out of her body in the bathroom, she opened the door and he picked her up and walked back. I haven't washed my hands yet. Don't get wet. There are wet towels. He carried her back, took out a pack of wet towels and gave her one. Su Chenxi blushed and slowly wiped her hands. Dirty guy. Now you are the dirty one. Li Xiqing arched an eyebrow and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How can you say that about me? She threw the tissue into the trash can under the bed and looked at his forehead. What happened to your head? I accidentally bumped into it. He reached out to help her take off her down jacket. Lie down a little longer. Su Chenxi knew that he was trying to change the subject, so she pushed him and questioned, Can you pretend to be like this if you're not careful? I'm unlucky. I'm bleeding, so I can only wrap it up. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of helplessness in it. Okay, I'll just have to believe it. However, she still refused to take off her coat and said, Rong Haiwe saved me. Yes, I know. Where is he now? He was shot. I heard he lost a lot of blood and is in the intensive care unit. Yes, I went to see him. He's better than you. Chapter 393. After the wound was treated and the blood transfusion was done, there was no big problem. I want to see him. Take me there. It's not convenient. What's not convenient? Su Chenxi asked and then thought of something. She pouted and said, What? He is old enough to be my father. I won't have anything to do with him. Hearing that, Li Xiqing felt a little helpless. He reached out and pinched her nose, saying, "In your eyes, am I this kind of person? Isn't it? I heard that his wife just arrived from the capital. He has been in Kingstown for half a month. They must have a lot to talk about." "Oh." Su Qianxi nodded. "Okay, take me to see him tomorrow." "Okay." He agreed and reached out to take off her coat. "Sleep a little longer." "I'm not sleepy." Su Qianxi pushed his hand away. "How long have you not slept? Look at your dark circles." Touching his face, she felt sorry for him. "Come up and sleep for a while." "I'm not sleepy. The bed is too small." "It's not small. I'll sit for a while." "No." She wanted him to sleep on the bed with her? "How about you go back to sleep?" "No." "Then I'll leave the hospital. Let's go back together." "No, your fever hasn't completely gone down. You had a high fever." Su Qianxi flared up. "Then what do you want?" Li Xiqing glanced at her and reached out to touch her forehead. With an imperceptible smile and affection in his eyes, he whispered, "You sleep. I'll watch over you." "No." "Then you hold my hand. I'll sleep next to you." "No." "Then how about we sleep together?" "No." Su Qianxi's first reaction was to refuse. "I have a cold. I'll pass it to you. I'm in good health." "No." More importantly, she was very likely to have AIDS now. What if, that's it? You sleep and I'll stay here. "You." Su Qianxi was annoyed and hit him. "Go back. I don't want you." He held her hand, his eyes darker and his voice husky. "If you don't want me, who do you want? You're disobedient. You're also disobedient. I haven't even said that I don't want you." Su Qianxi was speechless. "Be good and sleep." Exasperated, she took off her coat and handed it to him. Li Xiqing got what he wanted and smiled. Hanging up her coat, he turned around and saw that she had moved to the side, leaving the seat next to her. "Come up and sleep." "Okay, Mrs. Li." He took off his coat and shoes, turned off the light and climbed in. The moment he came up, he pulled her into his arms, lowered his head and was about to capture her lips. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat and immediately looked away. Missing the kiss, Li Xiqing kissed her chin. "I'm sick. You can't kiss me. It's contagious." "I'm in good health. I don't mind." "I mind." She moved away and pushed his face away. "Sleep well." "Yes." Li Xiqing put his arm around her waist and closed his eyes comfortably. Perhaps he was really exhausted and he soon fell asleep. His breathing was even and steady. Su Qianxi put her hand on his face. Perhaps because she was too hot, he felt cold when she touched him. Chapter 394. After a long time, Su Qianxi gently removed his arm and got out of bed. The person in her arms was empty and he did not wake up. He was sleeping soundly. Su Qianxi's heart ached even more. He must not have slept last night. Finding that she was missing, he must have been worried. However, this could not be the case. She could not stay with him all the time. Putting on her shoes and coat, Su Qianxi quietly opened the door of the ward and walked out. She was still worried. After all, Rong Haiyue had saved her life. If she did not see with her own eyes that he was fine, she would always feel a little uneasy. She asked a nurse and soon found out where Rong Haiyue's room was. Following the room number, Su Qianxi suddenly saw a woman walking toward her. This woman was mature and charming. She was wearing a long light green cheongsam and a dark green coat made of raccoon fur. Her long hair was combed into a charming bun. Her face was delicate and just right makeup, and her posture was straight and slender. She was a very special woman and also a very charming woman. However, what caught Su Qianxi's attention was not her extraordinary temperament, but her face. She had seen that face before and not just once. Rong Xian. That was Song Yifun's good days, the love of Xing Shiming's heart. Su Qianxi's impression of her only stopped at the old photo in Song Yifun's wallet, which was a vibrant girl with a flowery smile. She never thought that one day she would actually see the real person. When seeing Su Qianxi, the woman was obviously also dazed and recognized who she was at a glance. Rong Xian's expression was a bit indifferent. She nodded slightly at Su Qianxi, but it was just a polite greeting. In a flash, she walked around Su Qianxi in high heels. At the moment when she passed by her, Su Qianxi's heart was instantly set off a storm. Rong Xian. It was not a question but a confirmation. Rong Xian stopped and looked over. Su Qianxi thought that she would ask, "How do you know my name?" Or, "Do you know me?" At the very least he would ask, "Who are you?" However, to Su Qianxi's surprise, Rong Xian just glanced at her coldly. Her voice was cold and distant, without any warmth. She said, "Don't call me by that name. It's disgusting." After saying that, he turned around and left. Su Qianxi was dazed and looked at her back incredulously, watching her disappear at the corner of the corridor. Indifference. It was not the coldness of Li Xiqing, but an inexplicable malice. That kind of malice was like a sharp knife, cutting away the extravagant hope she had for her so-called mother. She was her mother. There was no doubt about it just by looking at his face. But why would she have evil intentions towards him? It was not until 10 seconds after Rong Xian left that Su Qianxi suddenly realized what she had done. She should have asked Su Qianxi why she abandoned Song Yifan, why she left alone, why she abandoned her daughter, why she married Li Xiqing, and why she became the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. Su Qianxi had a million questions in her heart, but because of that sentence she forgot everything. Su Qianxi struggled to catch up, looking for Rong Xian in the crowd. Chapter 395. After searching for a while, Su Qianxi went back the way she came. She walked to Rong Haiyue's ward and knocked on the door. There was a quick response. "Come in." It was Rong Haiyue's voice. Su Qianxi walked in and Rong Haiyue's eyes lit up. However, when he saw her, there was a trace of imperceptible disappointment in his eyes. He smiled and said, "It's you." It was this girl. He had almost mistaken her for someone else just now. Su Qianxi nodded and said sincerely, "Thank you for last night." "You're welcome. If it were someone else, I would have saved them as well." "So, it was not because you looked like her." Rong Haiyue said that to himself, but when he saw that face, his heart still ached. Su Qianxi walked over and glanced at his arm, which was obviously wrapped in gauze. She bowed deeply. "I'm sorry that you got hurt." Rong Haiyue quickly helped her up and said, "I said if it were someone else, I would have saved them as well. In a situation like last night, I don't think anyone would sit back and do nothing. What's more, I am a soldier." "I know. It's good that you know. Soldiers are the embodiment of justice. As a soldier, if I did not even help when something like that happened, wouldn't it be too useless and a waste of my identity as a soldier?" Rong Haiyue pretended to be proud, but after he said that, he suddenly realized that he had unconsciously used the way he usually coaxed his daughter. Su Qianxi wanted to laugh, but she couldn't help tearing up. Thank you so much. You child?" He chuckled, but his fists hidden under the quilt were slightly clenched. She was so similar, exactly like Rong Xian when she was young. Frank, pure, kind, and upright. What a good child, but why was she Song Yifan's daughter? Rong Haiyue was a bit disappointed. Looking at her, he pretended to ask casually, "Did your father come to see you?" "He is in London. My husband probably did not tell him about it." "Business trip? Performance?" "That's good. Mr. Song is a very good musician. Our neighbor's child especially admires him." Su Qianxi smiled, her eyes sparkling as she nodded. "I also admire him very much. My father is the best." "Yes." Rong Haiyue lowered his eyes to hide his loneliness. "Mr. Rong, is it convenient for you to give me your contact information?" Rong Haiyue was a little surprised, but he quickly agreed and turned to the table to flip through the paper. But there was no such thing. Rong Haiyue was a little embarrassed and said, "You should tell me your number. I will call you." She told him Li Xiqing's number and quickly added, "This is my husband's number. I don't know where my cell phone is. I will get a new card later." "Alright, can you tell me yours too?" She then told him her number and looked at the time in the ward. It was almost 10 p.m. "It's too late. I'll go back now. Good night, Mr. Rong." "Good night, rest early." She nodded gratefully and quickly walked out, closing the door behind her. Back in the ward, Li Xiqing sat on the edge of the bed with his phone in his hand, looking sleepy. Chapter 396. Okay. She walked in, took off her coat, and climbed into bed to put her arms around his neck. "How come you're awake?" He turned around and hugged her, whispering, "What did you say?" I thanked him, apologized, left my phone number, and came back. "Okay." Touching her forehead, he glanced at the time. "Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat?" "No. I don't have an appetite." "Then take the medicine." Su Qianxi pouted, a bit unhappy. He lowered his head and pecked her on the lips, whispering, "Be good." She felt like she was struck by lightning. He kissed her? How could he? Covering her mouth, she widened her eyes, her heart pounding. He saw that and pinched her nose. What reaction? It's not like we've never kissed before. Getting up, he went to get some water. Checking the temperature, he took out a packet of medicine and walked over with the medicine in one hand and the water in the other. Take it. Su Chinsi's hands trembled. Seeing the water, her eyes became even redder. She opened her mouth and said in a trembling voice, Mr. Lee, I was raped by someone with HIV. Maybe. I already have AIDS. Don't make excuses. Take the medicine. He poured the medicine out. Open your mouth. Su Chinsi swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She took the water and looked at the medicine, slightly dazed. You want me to feed you? He arched an eyebrow and approached her dangerously. With my mouth. No way. She immediately put the medicine in her mouth and swallowed it with the water. Sleep. He climbed onto the bed and pressed her down. The bed was a bit small and it was a bit crowded for 2 people. She could not fall asleep because she had something on her mind. And because Li Xiqing had slept for almost half an hour, he was also not sleepy. Mr. Li, yes. If one day I have a terminal illness, will you still want me? Yes. What if I get it soon? Yes. I'm going to die soon. Li Xiqing did not speak. He reached out and lifted her face. The light in the ward had been turned off by Li Xiqing. The faint light from the glass on the door shone into the pair of cold and deep eyes, making them look even more magnificent and bottomless. Then I'll die with you. The voice was low and deep, as if it was an ancient voice that had traveled through thousands of years. It reverberated in her mind and did not disperse for a long time. Su Chinsi's heart raced. Her tears fell uncontrollably. She immediately wiped her tears away, fearing that they would fall on him. Choking, she asked, Why? We are husband and wife, silly girl. He gazed at her with his deep eyes. I only have you as my wife. Without you, what's the point of living? Su Chinsi lowered her head, put her arms around his waist and cried, Mr. Li, I'm telling the truth. You think I'm lying? Li Xiqing held her in his arms and pulled her head closer to him. At this distance, in this position, she could clearly feel the vibration of his vocal cords. I'm very serious, Mrs. Li. Last night, when he thought she was really killed, his heart was empty. The only thought in his mind was to be with her, together. Chapter 397. Fortunately, he did not jump. Fortunately, she was fine. Su Chinsi leaned in his arms and said in a muffled voice, You can marry again. If I die, will you marry again? Su Chinsi was dazed. Would he? No. If he really went ahead of her, she would not hesitate to die with him. Her heart skipped a beat and she tightened her grip on him. She loved him for 2 lifetimes. However, he never said that he loved her. It turned out that he had such feelings for her? Did he have such deep feelings for her? Su Chinsi hugged him, tears streaming down her face. She sniffed and deliberately said, Of course you are dead. Why should I stay with you? It's disgusting to stay with a dead body. When she said this, her heart felt like it had been stung by thousands of bees, and the pain was beyond recognition. So, when she died, go and marry another one. Don't be with her, don't stay with her, it's not worth it. But Li Xiqing's hand was clenched tightly, almost embedding her into his bones. He whispered, I don't believe it. You won't. I will. You won't. Although his voice was soft, it was extremely firm. Su Chinsi did not speak, grabbed his collar and stared at the chest in front of her in the dark. Although she could not see anything. After a long while, she said in a low voice, Nothing is more important than yourself. There is. His voice sounded above her head. You are more important than myself. His voice was light, particularly beautiful in the quiet ward. Su Chinsi buried her head deeper, crying silently and closed her eyes. However, his heart was unable to calm down for the entire night. For the next 3 days, Su Chinsi spent in the hospital. After the doctor checked to make sure it was not the flu and did not relapse, she was discharged. Before leaving the hospital, Su Chinsi went to Rong Haiyue's ward to see him. Rong Haiyue was also ready to leave the hospital, dressed in casual clothes and carrying his own luggage. Su Chinsi did not see his legendary wife. When she asked, Rong Haiyue's eyes dimmed. He said, He is busy and has returned to the capital. She snorted. Li Xiqing was also very busy, but he had been in the hospital with her these 2 days. However, he didn't say anything. Considerately, he didn't ask any more questions and walked out of the hospital together. He offered to drive Rong Haiyue to the airport, and Rong Haiyue did not refuse. After leaving the hospital, she subconsciously looked for Li Xiqing's Maybach. However, no matter how hard he looked, he didn't see anything similar to a Maybach. There was a very flashy and beautiful super sports car parked in front of the hospital, looking like it was waiting for someone. Yang, is the driver not here yet? She turned her head and looked at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing pointed at the Bugatti in front of him. Coming. Su Qianxi widened her eyes in disbelief and asked, You changed your car? Don't you hate sports cars? Why did you change to this? For a change of mood. Yang got out of the car to open the door for them. Hearing what Li Xiqing said, he pouted inwardly. Stubborn. It was obvious that he had damaged the Maybach and changed it because it was too slow. He changed it to a supercar and it was a modified four-seater. He really did not understand the world of the rich. Chapter 398. Because she was taking Rong Haiyue to the airport, Su Qianxi sat in the passenger seat. The new car was indeed fast and stable. Just sitting there, Su Qianxi felt her blood was boiling. Neither of the two men in the back seat was talkative. They were both looking out of the window and the atmosphere seemed a bit awkward. On the airport highway, Su Qianxi finally couldn't help but ask, Mr. Rong, do you and your wife have children? Yes, I have a daughter the same age as you named Anna. Anna? Su Qianxi looked at him. Rong Anna? You know her? Bo Zhao's fiancée? Yes. Rong Haiyue was a bit surprised. You know them? Yes, I saw her once at a music conference last time. She is a very beautiful girl. Thank you. If she hears you, she will be so happy. Su Qianxi smiled and looked out of the window. Li Xiqing glanced at him and said calmly, You love your daughter very much. Yes, she is my only daughter. Li Xiqing glanced at him and did not speak. His eyes fell on Su Qianxi. No one noticed Li Xiqing's strangeness. Rong Haiyue was holding his phone and sending a WeChat message to his daughter, smiling more and more widely. Soon they arrived at the airport. Su Qianxi was going to take him to the gate, but Rong Haiyue declined. She could not insist, so she turned around and got back in the car. Come to the back. Li Xiqing waved at her and she obediently sat over, holding his arm and leaning on his shoulder. Li Xiqing noticed that she was not in a good mood. In the past few days, it seemed that Su Qianxi had been like this and nothing had changed. Putting his hand on her forehead, Li Xiqing whispered, Are you not feeling well? He was relieved that she did not have a fever. Su Qianxi slapped his hand away and shook her head. Oh, in a bad mood? Have you been in a bad mood these days? Su Qianxi leaned on his shoulder and did not speak. In the past 2 days, she had indeed been depressed and uncomfortable. Go to the first hospital, Li Xiqing said to Yang. Then he turned his head and looked at Su Qianxi. I will take you to see Tang Menjing's child. You haven't seen her yet, right? She was dazed and looked up. Right, wasn't she born prematurely? How are you now? He chuckled and poked her forehead. I thought you were in a bad mood because of this. It turns out that you have long forgotten about it. Taking out his phone, he opened Weibo and handed it to her. See for yourself. Su Qianxi took the phone and looked at it. Why did you change your phone? Didn't you just buy that one? It's broken. Oh. Su Qianxi did not care and refreshed her Weibo. The first trending topic was that the Tang family had gone bankrupt, Mrs. Tang was imprisoned for attempted murder, and Tang Jinghao was overwhelmed with donations and absconded. Scrolling down, it was Tang Menjing's message. Breaking news. Tang family's eldest daughter's Australian affair video exposed. It's over. Whose child is the Tang family's eldest daughter's unborn child? Paternity test shows Miss Tang's child has nothing to do with the Li family. Is it a coincidence or a mistake? Mistress Tang's child turns out to be mixed blood. Su Qianxi scrolled down one by one and clicked on the last one. The picture was of a little baby lying in an incubator. His skin was extremely white, and a handful of blonde hair was stuck to his scalp, looking not far away. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.